Another pretty warm day for a December Wednesday afternoon. It's once again about 45 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass. It is a jam-packed day. You know, once upon a time, National Signing Day in the world of college football was a real headline grabber and dominated much of the content on local airwaves and folks that write about college football and such. It's still a big deal, but the transfer portal has changed kind of the way this day lands, juxtaposed to the way that we used to cover it back in the day. There's still so many ways to add talent, and unfortunately, so many opportunities to lose talent as a result of the transfer portal. It's a little bit different now. Transfer portal, 20 days. It's a little bit smaller than it used to be as the powers that be in college football try to corral all of the issues surrounding this great sport that we all love. But we'll talk some signing day today on the Utah side of things, on the BYU side of things, national implications as well. Obviously, the CFP rankings released last night while we were still on air. And it's always kind of funny. I'm trying to scramble to bring you guys the information as far as what the rankings look like, what the bracket will look like in real time, and then you sign off air, and then you dig into it, and, you know, it's a little bit different. So we'll talk about the CFP rankings that were released last night. Championship weekend in college football will start on Friday. Should be a fun weekend of college football. Unfortunately, no local teams involved, but we'll get to some college football storylines on the program today on this Wednesday afternoon. Week 14 in the NFL gets rolling with Thursday night football tomorrow. Should be a good one. It's the Packers and the Lions. Ford Field in Detroit. As of right now, the Lions are a 3-point favorite at home over Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. So we'll do some NFL on the program today. Utah Hockey Club is off until Saturday. That's right. The Utah Hockey Club essentially getting the week off after a really busy schedule. But we'll do some hockey on the program today as well on a Wednesday. The Utah Jazz played a basketball game last night. Well, they were present. They showed up. It was ugly. It continues to be bad. We'll do some Jazz basketball, some NBA basketball on the show. The Thunder are really, really good, but the Jazz did themselves no favors. Tied an NBA record for turnovers in a half with 19 in the first half. And they finished with 29 turnovers. OKC scored 45 points off said turnovers, and it was not good. Continues to not be good, but probably by design. But we'll do some Jazz on the show. Ultimately, this time of year, right around Thanksgiving, thereabouts, 20 games played by most teams, thereabouts, about 19, 20, 21. It is kind of an unofficial benchmark in pro basketball where you look around and try to understand exactly what the tone and tenor of the league is going to sound like, going to be like. Teams that are off to bad starts, recalibrating as to whether or not they need to shift, move on from certain players, and teams that might find themselves in a position like the Houston Rockets where they've just surprised a lot of people. Do they add to the group? Do they think they're in a situation where they can actually compete for something pretty special? Fun game last night between the Warriors and the Nuggets. TNT had a double dip, and there's plenty of NBA action going on tonight. On this Wednesday, one more day until the NFL is back, couple more days till college football championship weekend. BYU basketball got thumped last night. Watch that game. They took on Providence. They went east, and they got thumped. It's a young team. Kevin Young's got a lot of growing pains to do, I guess is the way I'll put that. But, I mean, it really wasn't even close all game long. So college basketball here. And the first iteration of the net rankings are out. Providence won 83-64. BYU now has lost 2 of their last 3, and that is a team that a lot of people thought could make some noise in the Big 12. Utah Hoops will have a very interesting preseason challenge coming up on Saturday. Utah's preseason schedule is, let's see, it's soft, I guess is how I'll say that. 1 loss to Mississippi State. They're going to take on St. Mary's. St. Mary's, of course, a very, very good college basketball program. We'll be in Salt Lake City on Saturday nights, and then we kind of wait for Utah to get into Big 12 play, and hopefully Craig has some tricks up his sleeve. That team has picked to finish last in the Big 12. So a little bit of everything going on right now across the market. Good guest list on this Wednesday afternoon. Hope you're off to a great start to your work week, and you're halfway home, halfway to the weekend, one day closer on this Wednesday. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, will stop by today on National Signing Day. Still awaiting word about an offensive coordinator. Still awaiting word about Coach Witt, his official status. Maybe Riles can shed some light on that today. Richard Smith live in studio for an entire hour. Smitty's going to roll by, and we'll do some Jazz, some NBA, and kind of understand exactly what this team is and what they'll look like moving forward. Every time one of these NBA writers releases a piece on the trade deadline and the potential movement prior to, the Jazz are involved. Talked about this with Tim McMahon yesterday. And we'll get Smitty's take on it today during the 3 o'clock hour, NBA Daily Assist style with Zach Harper. Then Ali Mata stops by from the Utah Hockey Club, friend of the show, Utah Hockey Club player. We'll talk about the start of the season. It's been up, it's been down, it's been a little inconsistent, which is what you would expect from a young team. And what's the plan for their week off, like an entire week off here in the market. So Bill Riley, Richard Smith, Zach Harper, Ali Mata, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, on a signing day Wednesday. It does hit different than it used to. It used to be like the only day where college football programs could add talent. But now with the transfer portal, it's still interesting, but it's not near as intense as it used to be. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, you're still adding players to the roster. You're still, adding talent to the pool that you have, but Spence, you also don't know how many of these guys are going to actually ever be in your locker room. How many of them are going to decommit and then get an NIL deal with another Big 12 school and you don't see them again. That's just a reality of this new landscape of college football. So signing day still a big deal, not a huge deal, because as I mentioned, there's just so much still to be learned, both about these players. Number one, analyzing talent for 16, 17-year-olds is hard to begin with. It makes it even more difficult when you add money into the equation and you add what is basically a pro-style model. And we're seeing that. As you mentioned, the window's a little bit closed, a little bit smaller. NCAA is trying to put the genie back in the bottle a little bit, but that only goes so far. So, yeah, it's a little different than it usually is, but still a day where you see some new faces, that some of which will eventually play for the U.
And look, it's always just exciting to – players are always really popular when you've never seen them play. I always get a kick out of signing day when it comes to the coaches and the fan base. Then you kind of see them play or they take off and you're disappointed. But it is good content because, of course, Utah football, BYU football, very topical. So we'll bring in Riles today to kind of – get us up to date on what's going on with the Utah football program. But before Bill hops on, courtesy of our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, it's your tailgate headquarters. You get everything you need to make your tailgate epic. Standard carries everything for your tailgate needs. Stop by their location at 3500 Southwest Temple or online at standardrestaurant.com. On a Wednesday, it's time now for your opening tip. So still awaiting word on the Utah football side of things for who the offensive coordinator will be. I'm starting to wonder if we're actually going to get anything official about Coach Witt either coming back or retiring. It sounds like he might just come back and never say anything. I mean, he is under contract. It might just be a scenario where nothing needs to be said and he comes back as the head coach. I'm kind of leaning more and more in that direction as of right now. So nothing official with the offensive coordinator. I'm sure conversations are going on fast and furious. And yes, I believe that it is paramount to get this done sooner rather than later. But it is early signing day for Utah football, for BYU football, for all of college football. Transfer portal will officially open on the 9th. I mean, we've already heard a bunch of players who have put their name in the transfer portal, giving them some time to negotiate essentially deals now. To try to get some NIL money before they decide where they're going to play. And unfortunately, that's driving everything because, hey, we do live in America. Capitalism. High five. But last night, during the 5 o'clock hour of the show, and it's always funny, like, I can remember when I first started the show over 5 years ago, and it was 2019 when Utah football was really good. And so 5 o'clock hour of the program, CFP release, and back then, BCS, it's different. College football playoff now, 12 teams expanded. And the only thing people wanted was to hear the rankings released live. So we would try to bring that to you. And it's funny when you're just trying to digest them in real time and then talk about them on air, you really miss a lot. So ultimately, last night after the show, go home and dig in on a couple of different things. And I think it's safe to say, whether you like it or not, I feel like Alabama is in. I think that's a lock. Now, the one caveat here is if Clemson beats SMU, what does the committee do with what I perceive to be an SMU versus Alabama situation? And the more you kind of dig into it, the more and more I believe that they are going to put Bama in even if SMU loses. Because the fact of the matter is, if SMU loses to Clemson coming up in the ACC championship game, and I feel like the ACC is the worst of the P4 conferences. I know a lot of people feel like that's the Big 12. I just feel like the Big 12 has better depth overall, 1 through 12. I mean, Oklahoma State, Utah, two of the worst teams, quote unquote, worst teams in the conference, I think would probably be 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the ACC. The Big 12 to me has better depth than the ACC. But if SMU loses to Clemson, they will essentially have lost to the 2 best teams they played all year, which is BYU. BYU got them early in the year in their building. And then Clemson in the ACC championship game. Otherwise, their schedule has manifested itself as very average. The Louisville win at the time looked okay. The Pitt win at the time looked okay. Pitt finished conference play 3-5. They're 7-5 overall. Louisville 5-3. They stumbled to 5th in the conference, 8-4 overall. So, in my opinion, that would mean SMU would have lost to the 2 best teams they played and therefore opened the door for Alabama. I feel like Bama is in no matter what because if SMU wins, they're in. Clemson won't jump Alabama. This really is bad news for Ole Miss, South Carolina, and then Miami. But I don't think, I've listened to a lot of people today say Miami has a case. I don't think they do. I really don't. Miami with a couple of bad losses, and it is how you're playing at the wrong time of year for Miami, much in the same way as it was for Brigham Young, BYU. If they would have had those 2 losses earlier in the year and time to rebound and put together a streak of wins to end the year like they did to kind of start the year, we might have a different conversation about BYU and the Big 12. But the committee clearly, puts a lot of emphasis on head-to-head. And I know there are a lot of South Carolina people out there, including our buddy Spencer Hall, who joined us this week and kind of was hoping that South Carolina would get in over some of these at-large teams. South Carolina straight up lost to Alabama head-to-head. So there's really no leg to stand on. I think Ole Miss probably has a little bit of a case, more so than South Carolina or certainly Miami. But Miami, to me, is the one team that nobody should be banging the drum for. I mean, they had an opportunity and they completely blew it. So for all of the hand-wringing and all of the people upset, and look, ultimately the seeding and the buys will take care of themselves coming up during conference championship weekend. But I don't think any of the outcomes will push Alabama out. I feel like the bubble teams are in as of now. And then we'll see over the weekend who's able to win their conference championship games, and then that will equate to the buys. It feels like Boise, if they win, they'll probably get the bye in the first round, not the Big 12 champ. If UNLV, finds a way to beat Boise, does that allow Arizona State to maybe jump in and grab that bye if they beat Iowa State? Potentially. But as of now, the bracket feels like it's almost set, depending on what happens over conference championship weekend. Oregon 1, Texas 2, SMU 3. They lose. Obviously, it's different. Boise State 4. And then your first-round matchups would be Arizona State, Penn State, Tennessee, Ohio State at the shoe. That would be awesome. Alabama, Notre Dame for a first-round game. Then Indiana, Georgia to advance on to play the teams with a bye to start. So CFP rankings released, even though there's no local flavor anymore. Still fun, still very topical because we have conference championship weekend coming up this weekend. All right, National Signing Day, the early National Signing Day. We'll talk about some of the players that have signed on the dotted line to play for Utah. And then we'll get to potentially some news with Coach Witt and maybe an offensive coordinator announcement as well as Bill Riley joins us coming up on the other side. Going to move over to Richard Smith as well as Zach Harper and Ali Mata on a Wednesday. Keep it right here on ESPN 700.
Risk in the backfield with Montgomery. 3 receivers on the right-hand side. Utah showing some pressure. Now they back away from it. Now they bring a safety up. 4-man rush. Risk looking, surveying, throwing down the field, and it's intercepted at the 40, at the 50, at the 40, at the 30. A convoy to the end zone and a touchdown. It's Zamaya Vaughn with a pick 6 and his final game as a Ute.
Wow. Well, it's not 11 o'clock, circa 4 or 5 months ago. It is 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully we brought a little nostalgia to the listeners today as the voice himself, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, stops by on a Wednesday afternoon. Riles, happy Wednesday. How you doing?
Spence, I'm good. Things are going good on a Wednesday. I don't know what's gone faster, the fact that I've been off the air, not doing my show for 4 or 5 months, or the football season. It feels like the football season went by really quick. I know it wasn't the season anybody wanted. I get that part of it, but it just felt like it was like the Southern Utah or the Baylor game just the other day. I can't believe the season's over.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about it all the time. All we do when football is gone is complain and wait for it to come back, and then we're like miserable when it's here and then it's gone. It's like you need to enjoy it even when the season isn't what you hoped it would be, because it does come and go really quickly.
Yeah, I've always said it's the season we wait longest for, and it goes by the fastest. Nobody ever said, man, that NBA season just flew by. Nobody ever said, oh, that NHL or that baseball season flew by. But we always talk about football season like it was a blink of an eye.
No doubt, no doubt. So, Riles, on a Wednesday afternoon, I have to ask you, early signing day, hot or not?
I would say not. I feel like the transfer portal has overtaken National Signing Day. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
In the old days, we were all about the signing day and press conferences and who. I just feel like everybody. It's like, okay, this is great, but most of these kids aren't even going to play for a couple of years if they're even with our program in a few years. The transfer portal opens next week. Who can we go out and get?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I wonder how many of our listeners have any sort of context or frame of reference as to why I'm posing the question that way. But we don't need to dig into it any further. I will ask you.
Hey, Spence,
it
was a different time.
It was a different time, oh, for sure. In a lot of different ways, Bill, a different time. But I'll ask you. I'm not. I mean, I've got the list in front of me. We're doing kind of just live tracking here. Hey, instead of going down the list, I'll just ask you, is there any buzz about any of these young players that Utah has locked in that you're hearing about up on the Hill?
No, I mean, it's kind of quiet today, to be really fair. Again, I just think even schools and universities, they're publicizing it, but it's just not quite what it was. It's very interesting to me that the quarterback they landed, not the kid from Southern California, but the Texas State commit, flipped just a couple of days ago. You know, does that have anything to do with a potential offensive coordinator flip? And then the Thatcher kid, the linebacker, who I think is going to be a really, really good kid too. I like him a lot as well. But it's just so hard today. It used to be, oh man, which one of these guys is going to play next year? You know, what are they going to be in a couple of years? And now it's just kind of like, okay, I hope they stick around to develop. Because college football has become such a here and now, Spence. It's not about, you know, being in a program 2 or 3 years and biding your time. It's about, okay, how quickly can I get on the field? And if I can't get on the field, where can I go and get on the field now?
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's just move on from it then, because there's really nothing to dig into. And as I tell our listeners, we'll continue to update you on the breaking news that comes down if any of it rolls our way. But we are in a spot now. We're waiting to hear who the play caller is going to be next year as far as the OC, the offensive coordinator. Ben Arbuckle, who was the name that was kind of floated out, ends up at Oklahoma after doing a really good job on the Palouse. So I'll just ask you, any buzz? You hearing anything about any names, any idea when we may hear an announcement?
I think it's the priority right now. I mean, I think the longer this goes, it feels more and more to me like Kyle Whittingham's coming back. I don't know anything. I honestly, I've been bombarded all day long with text messages for the last 4 or 5 days. Kyle's been very hush about it. He told me over the weekend when we were in Orlando, he goes, hey, I'll let you know if something changes. I'm like, great, thanks. I haven't heard anything from him. So I think if we're going to play the card, you know, it's always, there's not going to be a press conference if Kyle Whittingham comes back. might be a release, says, hey, I'm back for a couple more years, whatever. But I'm approaching this as business as usual. So to your point, the offensive coordinator is the most important hire right now. I do know that they coveted the Arbuckle OC from Washington State, and a lot of people saw that connection and bringing the Mateer kid, his quarterback, with him. Well, Oklahoma apparently swept in last second and must have made him an offer he couldn't refuse because he's now in Norman, Oklahoma. My guess is the quarterback Mateer goes with him. So now it's on to the next. I'm reading a lot of the same stuff that you're reading. I do know that this name, the Mac Leftwich name from Texas State, is somebody I even heard a week or two ago when Arbuckle's name was starting to come up too. He runs a really good offense. It's a balanced offense. They throw it quite a bit, but they run it as well at Texas State. He's one of those young and up-and-coming former college quarterbacks, really done some good things, one of those hot young names. You know, people say Texas State. Well, Texas State's a pretty good program, and he's had a lot of experience, and he's recruited Texas. So I think that's a name to keep an eye on. And then there's some other stuff out there as well. I mean, there's a guy at Tulane that people like a lot. They've mentioned the UNLV coach, although he might have plans to go bigger or try and get a head coaching job. But I think the name that's intriguing to me right now is the OC from Texas State, Mac Leftwich.
So I want to follow up. You touched on Coach Witt, but I want to follow up because, of course, as you know, I mean, if I'm getting text, Riles, I can't imagine what your phone is sounding like and looking like with everybody really wanting to know what's going to happen. And I started the show off today surmising that because there is no news, I do believe that means he's coming back. And I suppose the exception would be if he hasn't decided, but that seems pretty anti-Kyle to me. He's not a wishy-washy, like, emotional guy. He strikes me as the type that would just decide and, boom, move on to whatever's next. And I don't think he would put Morgan in a spot of ambiguity, and I don't think he would put the program or Mark Harlan, the AD, in a spot of, like, okay, wondering what the deal is. So for me, the fact that there is no news does mean that Coach Witt will be back on the sidelines for Utah. Is that kind of where your head is at right now? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, just because he's talked so much, Spence, about doing what's best for the program, because it's his program. He's sunk 20 years as head coach and 30 years of his life at the University of Utah. He is more synonymous with this football program than probably any player that played for him over the last 20 years. And he's talked in the last couple of weeks about whatever his decision is, he was going to do the best for the program. Well, holding out and making a decision a week or 10 days, that isn't what's best for the program, at least in my mind. You know, if you're going to make that decision, you make it, you make that change, you let the new guy get in. That's Morgan Scalley, coach in waiting, and go from there. So the fact that we're sitting here on Wednesday, now maybe it has something to do with National Signing Day. I don't know. I don't think that's the case, but you know, it's not as if he just started thinking about it Friday after the game. It's probably been something he's been mulling over for a little while. So the fact that we're sitting here on Wednesday and we've really heard no news, I'm kind of with you. I don't know this. Again, no news, officially to Bill Riley. But my inkling would be, because he's talked about doing what's right and what's best for the program, it kind of feels like it's trending toward him returning.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, there was a rumor yesterday that Noah Fafita was hitting the transfer portal. That has been dispelled. Noah's father told ESPN that he's staying at Arizona. I only bring it up, Bill, because yesterday I was just kind of talking aloud about the possibility of Utah hitting the transfer portal to find a quarterback. You watched every game up close. You called all these games up close. Do you feel like the answer under center is in the room or in the transfer portal?
I think you probably have to go find somebody, Spence. I do. I think I like some of the stuff I saw from Brandon Rose. I do. And Brandon's got a couple of years left of eligibility. But, to me, and it's really going to be up to the new offensive coordinator, whoever that happens to be, to evaluate what his room looks like. But I think the head coach knows they have to have somebody. I think Isaac Wilson could still be a terrific quarterback, but Isaac Wilson was thrown into a tough situation as a true freshman, and I think it takes a little time to marinate. Heck, look at Dylan Raiola, Spence, who's at Nebraska. He was supposed to be the second coming of Patrick Mahomes this year, and he's just been okay. He's had a lot of downs and ups. I just think it's tough at the Power 4 level as a true freshman without any game experience to come in and be successful. So I still think I'm still a guy that thinks Isaac Wilson could be a good quarterback, but I think redshirting for a year and maybe sitting back and looking and watching would be very beneficial. I think that was the plan. I think the plan all along was sit and learn from Cam Rising for a year, but obviously that went sideways. So to me, I think they're probably going to shop the portal and try and find somebody.
So as of now, I believe, at least from what I understand today, and certainly pieces of news I could have missed, but is it only Jalen Glover who's hit the transfer portal from the Utes, or anybody else they've lost? I feel like the only name I've heard of note has been Jalen, and he left prior to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think I saw a couple of notes that some not frontline guys, some guys that were maybe reserve players, maybe had hit the portal. But, yeah, you're right. There's been nobody of note that has hit the portal. In fact, you've seen some of the guys on social media, the Spencer Fanos and the Cam Calhouns and the Smith Snowdens, some of these really good, young, talented cornerstone pieces kind of reaffirm they're coming back in 25. Logan Fano did the same thing. So, yeah, Glover hit it up, a week or so ago. I saw a couple of, kind of reserve-type players that maybe did, but nobody of note.
Well, that's excellent news, and obviously there's plenty of time. The portal officially opens on the 9th. So here's how I'll pose the question to you, Bill. What gives you the most confidence that this year was an anomaly and a moment in time as opposed to the new normal for Utah football?
Because we haven't seen dips like this. It was back-to-back. I mean, a year ago, I teach the class up at the U, and I had one of the kids in my class the other day make a presentation on Utah football and what it was. And he brought up an interesting stat. Had Utah football's offense simply averaged 24 points a game this year, they would have gone, I think, 9-3. Had they averaged 28 points a game this year, I think he said they would have gone 10-2. 28 points and 24 points are double-digit points lower than what they averaged the 2 years they won the Pac-12 championship. It just hasn't been like this. I think injuries and attrition and a little bit of bad luck have befallen this team. The defense was still outstanding. They were in every game in the fourth quarter with the exception of, I think, the Colorado game where they were double digits down there. But besides that, they were in every game. Just some pretty average quarterback play this year, Spence. And Utah would have been, I'm not going to say would have won I don't know if they would have won the Big 12, but average to slightly above average quarterback play, and they would have been in that discussion last weekend with BYU and ASU and and Colorado and Iowa State. So that, to me, says there's still a lot of talent in the program, but they've got to get it fixed at the most important position.
Which leads me to Cameron. Of course, when Coach Witt was asked about Cam potentially coming back for year number 8, which is just, it's so crazy to think about the potential, but that's the deal now. Kyle said it's up to him. I wonder what Kyle would do if Cam called him and said, hey, I got to talk to you, and rolled into the coach's office and said, I've thought about it. There's some NIL money out there, and I've decided to come back for year 8. If we take Kyle at his word, he just opens the door, right? Like, what do you think Coach Witt does if that scenario presents itself?
That I don't know, because it's hard to, after back-to-back seasons where Cam's been here 5 years, and he has been hurt, season-ending injuries in 3 of those 5 years. We all forget the COVID year where he hurt his shoulder in that USC second game of the year. And then, of course, you had the end of the Rose Bowl, and then he missed the entire season, and then this year too. That's a lot of track record of injury to bring back. I'm not saying somebody wouldn't give him a chance. I'm not even saying Utah wouldn't. But, boy, you really have to weigh that, because you see guys all the time, once you start getting hurt, that tends to be it kind of tells you the body is just not taking and recovering the same way it used to. So I think it'd be a really tough decision, and I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as to what Kyle and his staff would do. Again, though, I think it's up to the offensive coordinator too, Spence. You're bringing in an offensive coordinator, and in theory, Kyle said it's got to be a guy that's running a new and different system. It's got to be plug and play. The new OC has to be on board with who his QB is because that's the most important position on the field. So I would think it would be a kind of a co-op decision between head coach and OC as to whether they brought him back.
You know, the other thing, Bill, and I don't know how much meat is on this bone, but I did hear several people surmise last year that the fact that Cameron was coming back potentially may have scared some quarterback prospects to play, wanting to come play here because they simply didn't want to be his backup. Those are just rumors. I have no idea. But I think the other side of it is if Utah wants to be aggressive in the transfer portal to go get one of these top shelf QBs to be here for a year or two, it might just be better for both parties to say, hey, thanks for the memories, but you walk that way, I'll walk this way, and we part in love type thing. I mean, that's just kind of what my gut tells me.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're serious about shopping in the portal for a bit, no Noah Fafito or John Mateer is coming here. They're coming here to be the guy. That's what they're coming here to be. They're coming here to be the starting quarterback, and they've got a chance to, again, everybody. I understand you've got to win the job in fall camp, blah blah blah. But it's the unwritten wink, wink. As long as you show up and play hard, you're gonna. That's the thing. So you've got to really make your choice if you're Utah. You're either bringing Cam Rising back or you're going in the portal and shopping for a big time transfer quarterback.
Yeah, only time will tell. Okay, one more football thing. Then I want to do a little basketball with you. We got St. Mary's on Saturday, which should be an interesting test for Craig. And I honestly don't know if there's anything here, but I do know that BYU, year one in the Big 12, talked a lot about the lessons they learned in their first year in the conference. Now, the main difference here and real important line of delineation is Utah football played a decade of P5 football then, P4 football now with the Pac-12, and BYU football independent was not a P4, P5 program. They did not have that schedule year in and year out. So the one-year adjustment period for them just makes more sense in my mind than it would for Utah. But are there lessons to be learned for Utah football year one in a new conference? So maybe Utah next year, like BYU year two, can turn some of those close losses into wins and then be potentially looking to be in the race for the conference championship. Is there any meat on that bone?
I think there's small lessons, Spence, and I think it's more specific to opponents or venues or styles of play. But to be fair, I don't think that I think the Big 12 was very competitive, but I don't think it was any better a league or certainly at the top than what Utah saw for 13 years in the Pac-12. I don't think there was a roster adjustment or a talent level. I don't think there was a disparity in talent between the two leagues by any means. So if there were any lessons, they were maybe smaller lessons about opponents in particular or how coaches like to coach against you or styles of play more than anything else.
You saw both teams up close. Who do you like? Iowa State, Arizona State coming up Saturday in Arlington.
I think I like Arizona State. It kind of feels like a team of destiny this year. It kind of feels like Kenny Dillingham has found something there. I like Levitt a lot. That being said, I did say this. I think Iowa State is the most balanced team Utah played this year. May have been the best team on both sides of the ball. But I think Arizona State's kind of playing with a purpose, and they've got that proverbial, that horseshoe up their rear end just a little bit, getting some breaks and playing hard. I like Kenny Dillingham too. So I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think either one of those teams are greatly better than the other, but I'll take ASU.
All right, last thing, then I'll set you loose. St. Mary's rolls into town Saturday night. Should be a fun preseason test for Craig's team. They're 6-1 through 7. The 1L is to Mississippi State. I've been intentionally watching a lot of Big 12 basketball, and I know Craig, and I love this about Craig's attitude. He wants the challenge. Well, he's going to get the challenge because, my goodness, It is deep, and even the teams that aren't ranked in the top 25 are really, really high caliber. BYU gets smoked last night against Providence, but give us an update, a progress report through 7 games on this basketball team, and what's a reasonable expectation, not just Saturday night, but throughout the course of the rest of the season.
I've been saying this for a while. This is a good team. I think they're going to outplay their preseason expectations. By what, I don't know yet. But They're 6-1 right now, Spence. Their one loss was a neutral court loss in Mississippi to Mississippi State. But I do maintain, had Lawson Lovering played that game, they would not have lost that game. They got beat 78-73 in that game. They were playing 4 guards, and they were small ball all day long and a bunch of foul trouble. I think they're 7-0 if they have that. Now they're going to need Lovering and a little bit of Zach Keller. They're going to need their size and their big boy britches on Saturday because St. Mary's is tough. They're 8-1. Their only loss was to ASU in a close one. They lead the nation in offensive rebounding. NBA fans out there will be interested. The great Sharunas Marshallonis, his son Augustus, is the stud for this St. Mary's team. But they're balanced, and it's what Randy Bennett always does, Spence. He's got a bunch of big bodies that will just bang you in the front court and got good guard play. So this will be the best non-conference game for Utah by far, and the best game at the Huntsman Center till Big 12 play begins. Utah's got great depth, and they can really shoot it, too. They've got 5 guys who can shoot it, a couple of guys coming off the bench. But to me, the one thing, if they can keep St. Mary's St. Mary's has twice as many offensive rebounds as their opponents this year. They lead the nation in offensive rebounding. You can keep them a little bit off the offensive glass. I think they could beat St. Mary's. I think it'll be a great game, though.
All right, my guy, appreciate the time on a Wednesday. Still waiting for you to roll in the studio and hang out with us at some point. So let's do that soon, okay?
Sounds good, Spence. Thanks.
All right, the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, brought to you today by Big O Tires. It's their extended Black Friday sale. It ends on December the 8th. Big 3 G1 free on Big O. I don't know what that means, but I'm just going to read the copy. Big 3 G1 free on Big O brand tires and select sets of premium tires throughout the course of the store. Oh, thank you. Buy 3, get 1 free.
You did this on the BOGO, the buy 1, get 1 too.
Okay, I'll tell you something worse. I was at the Road Home a number of years ago and doing the solo show, and I'm announcing all of the contributions, all of the donations.
Right.
And in real time, my brain did not connect that Annan meant anonymous.
Thank you, Annan.
So I announced like 7 straight donations. I'm like, who's this Annan guy? What a prince of a man.
Super charitable.
What a sweet guy. So B3G1 is buy 3, get 1 free.
There you go.
Write it out on the copy.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay? Jan or whoever. I'm not calling anyone out. But anyway, Big O Tires, let's get back to it. Buy 3, get 1 free on all of their premium tires. 99.95 tip-top healthy car special, which includes a full synthetic oil change and a wiper blade replacement. Big O Tires has financing options to fit every budget and situation. Walk-ins are welcome, or you can schedule an appointment over the phone. Visit BigOTires.com to find a location near you. Let me reiterate, buy 3, get 1 free. Or B3G1, because we want to be cute. Let's go. going to bring in Zach Harper today, little NBA Daily Assist style. Ali Mata, who just was called up to represent Finland from the Utah Hockey Club, will stop by a little bit later on as well. Start things off with the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. It is early signing day, a day that does not hit near the way it used to as a result of the transfer portal, because so many of these kids who have signed to play for these local teams may never even play here because they could get an offer to go elsewhere. A transfer portal officially opens up on December the 9th, but a lot of players have already announced their intention. No news yet on either the offensive coordinator or an official announcement for Coach Witt, which leads me to believe that he's coming back. But live in studio for an entire hour, my buddy Richard Smith on a Wednesday. Smitty, happy Wednesday. How are you? Let's turn his mic on.
No,
there we go.
It probably works better for your ratings if the mic is
Well, I mean, as I often say, my Christmas wish as a radio host is the ability to control microphones in the studio, but that's probably too much to ask. How are you? How are you, buddy?
We're doing great. Yeah, we're doing. It's a beautiful day outside, and we had a great Thanksgiving weekend last week, as I know you did back east and with your family, and it's all good.
Good to be back east. And for you, you spent the holiday vacationing in the happiest place on earth.
This was big time, Spence.
It was.
We were down. We were down at Disneyland for 4 glorious days, and I'll tell you what. When you're in the middle of Disneyland, and I did not know this. This is the first time that Linda and I have ever done this with some friends. But when you're there, if you didn't know anything else that's going on in the world, you would make the assumption, well, I guess in the United States, they don't have the traditional family get-together around the table at home now anymore. Everybody just goes to Disneyland.
Just jam-packed.
Oh, it was wall-to-wall people.
Yeah.
And it was, but the weather was good, and we had a fun time. It was a different experience for us, and we had a lot of fun. It was great.
So we'll get to the Jazz in a moment because, my goodness. But I wanted to ask you this today, and want to be very clear here. I don't know what Coach Witt is going to do. I just feel like because there has been no official announcement, it leads me to believe he's coming back. I mean, right now it's early signing day. They're so busy with recruiting, transfer portal, and such. I think if he was going to step aside, we would know by now. But I wonder if you could illuminate us a little bit. What are some of the things you kind of balance out when, you saw a lot of coaches come and go, and when you're in, admittedly, the late fall, early winter of your career, what are some of the things you balance out when you want to decide whether or not you want to keep going?
Yeah, when you have a year like the Utes had this year, I think the most important thing for them is to be able to step back and take a deep breath and get a little perspective on what happened. When you were in the middle of that tornado that they were in and that downhill slide in October and November, a lot of things come at you, and you have a lot of different thoughts about anytime anything goes wrong. It's just exacerbated and overblown. So when you get to the end of the season, you want to be able to step back and step away from it for a little bit and try and get away and just clear your head and kind of look at it for what it really was, without all of that drama that you were in the middle of. And I agree. I tend to agree with you, Spence. I don't know anything about anything regarding Coach Whittingham and his thoughts and the program going forward. But it just feels like if it was going to be something around the deal of him leaving, that they probably would have done it already early this week, just to cut it clean.
Yeah.
And let everybody know, hey, so don't bother us again. We'll give you some more updates, kind of thing. And it just but then again, maybe he's off on some island somewhere for a week, trying to get his head clear. I'm sure with the early signing date and all that, they're probably just the opposite, with their heads down and in the office trying to get those kinds of things locked down for their program. But it feels like to me also that just as a fan that you probably would have heard something else if there was something in that regard going on. So my gut also tells me that when the dust settles, there won't be anything. They'll just be business as usual, and they'll be looking for an offensive coordinator, obviously, and then just going on with that would be my guess.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. And Kyle also doesn't strike me as a wishy-washy guy. I mean, he seems to be a pretty pragmatic person where, like, if he knew he was going to leave, I think he just would have told everybody and then moved on, right, to whatever's next. But you do have some context with college coaches that you know over the years that have just elected to not deal with the new reality of college athletics. And we've seen examples in college football. Nick Saban's the biggest one. Others, too. Tony Bennett, who won a national championship right before the year, was like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I want to deal with this. So while I do believe Kyle's coming back, part of me wouldn't blame him if he's like, you know what? This is a new game. Because you're a CEO. You're not just a coach. There are so many layers. And yes, now a lot of them have general managers and guys that can help them out run the program. But the new reality of college athletics seems to have really struck a lot of these old school coaches in a way where some of them just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, well, that happened, I know, last week with Mac Brown in North Carolina, a longtime coach and won a national championship when he was at Texas. Has had 2 successful stints at the University of North Carolina as their head football coach, but they decided to let him go last week before their final game with NC State, and then they had the game with there, and they lost. And in his post-game press conference, he said, "Yeah, I'm done." And he goes, "This isn't," and he made reference to just the whole thing in general, not just his situation, but when he said, "This isn't the game that I signed up for." You know, way back when. It's all different now, and so this is probably a good timing for everybody, and for me to exit stage left, and for them to, to bring in somebody else. And hey, Jay Wright did it last year, right? And he had won 2 national championships, and we know our good friend up the road, Randy Ray, got out at Weber State a couple years earlier than he had originally planned in terms of his career plans, because he just thought, he saw all this stuff coming and said, I don't want to deal with this, and especially at a place like Weber State, which is a mid-major, which is going to have trouble competing with NIL kinds of stuff, with bigger programs and that kind of thing. So I'm surprised that we don't see more of the coaches. I guess when you're in it, you like what you're doing, and it changes, and you have to adapt. And Coach Witt said this, I know, in one of his recent press conferences, that hey, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether it works for you or not, the bottom line is, if you're in the business, then you just have to adapt and figure out how to make it work to the best of your ability. And so that's something that probably would come into play if he were to make some decision to get out now, just because all of that has changed. And it seems, Spence, that it's evolving and changing all the time. Like, there's not a set path that everybody's going down. It's always diverging. It's always going left or right, and different things are happening in the transfer portal. And I heard on OC's show earlier, they're talking about just and with you, with Bill Riley, just in the last segment, about the early signing day, and the fact that it really doesn't carry as much impetus or weight now as it used to with fans and the media in general, because how much does it matter? Because a kid says, yeah, I'm signing with Utah. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay. And then a month from now, he says, oh, I changed my mind. I'm going to USC instead. Like, they can do that. And so it really doesn't matter. And so that's the hard part I would think the coaches are dealing with is how do we get somebody? How do we then hold on to them? Because there's really not a contractual type situation at this time in college athletics where you can get a commitment and then have it be binding and have someone have to stay like you do in the professional ranks where you sign contracts.
Yeah, and we had a guest on yesterday named Matt Brown, who writes a college football newsletter called Extra Points, and Matt is a very bright guy who essentially creates content to help people understand the new business of college football, like college football issues off the field. And right now, it's pretty crazy that essentially the NIL contracts, or whatever you want to call them, are created by legal teams from member institutions. There's no uniformity. There's no governing body. So I'm not saying they're doing this, but the University of Utah could have their legal team put together a contract for a player to sign and essentially say, hey, there's a stipulation in this contract that you can't transfer for a couple years or whatever. And the player can, give him a double bird and go down and sign at BYU because BYU doesn't have that stipulation. For me, Smitty, every issue that keeps popping up with collegiate athletics can be solved with one thing, and that is moving into the pro model, allowing the players to unionize, collectively bargain with the powers that be. The problem is, who are the powers that be right now? Like football wants to break away from the NCAA. But the problem is there's so much red tape between here and there and that finish line. University presidents aren't interested in having their athletes be employees because of all those implications. I still believe that's the one solution, though. Do you think people would have an issue? At this point, it doesn't feel like they would have an issue because there's so many problems. But do you think the people that consume collegiate athletics would have an issue if they just unapologetically leaned into the pro model?
Well, I think that I don't think the fans are going to have a problem with it as long as your team gets the guy that they want.
Sure.
Right? I mean, it's but what's interesting is I saw a thing a couple weeks ago. One of the ESPN broadcasters had done a recent game with Williams and Amherst, Division III football programs back in Massachusetts that you and I are familiar with. And they don't have scholarships. They don't have all this kind of NIL kind of stuff going on at that level. He said he invited to the game, went and did the game, experienced that on the small college level, and then afterwards the team from Williams, when they win, they have in that big rivalry game, they have the whole team marches up the hill that goes through campus, goes through town. And everybody rallies around him. And he said it was such a great old-style collegiate experience. And, I wonder if at some point, fans will go, I can go to Utah games, or I can go to BYU games, but, these guys are just, they're getting paid like money, and they're getting paid more than I work at my job, and they're 18-year-old kids playing basketball or playing wide receiver on the football team, whatever it is. And I don't know how much interest I have in that, especially if they keep raising my ticket prices. I'll just go to watch the guys over at Westminster play basketball, right? Or I'll go out to Salt Lake Community College and watch the women's softball team, which is highly competitive and all that kind of stuff, and get my fix that way. It's really going to be interesting. I think fans, what's going to happen is as this continues. With the NIL stuff and the money that's involved with student athletes, how it affects your ticket prices and how it affects you actually attending games is going to be a big deal, because this year trying to go to Utah football games was really astounding to me, the prices that you were looking at to try and go to a game. That's one game, and they have a lot of people who are paying season ticket prices and seat licenses and that kind of stuff, and Crimson Club dues and all those kind of things. At some point, there's a saturation point where the fan is going to say, "That's enough. I'm out." Unless your team runs a table and has a year like BYU had in football, right? Otherwise, if you're middling around. It's really going to be tough to hold on to the fan base that you have.
All right, let's move over to some NBA stuff. And I have a big picture NBA topic before we get into some Jazz stuff. And I'm really interested to get your take, because the highest rated television NBA finals, 1998. You were there. I was there. Jazz Bulls. At its peak, it was essentially 35.8 million viewers. That Sunday night game, which is a 22.3 rating. So 35.89 million viewers is a massive, massive number. The highest rated NBA Finals game from last year was Game 4, Celtics Mavs, 11.43 million viewers. That's the highest rated game. And we're talking about 19 million less than, and to be fair, the highest rated NBA Finals, which was Jazz Bulls, Jordan's Last Dance, all that stuff. And during the mid to late 90s, pro basketball never passed the NFL, but it was throwing punches with it. there was a legitimate debate, like what's the most popular sport in America? Is it basketball or football? And while football was the answer then, continues to be the answer now, the gap is huge. The other night, 1.9 mil for the TNT. That was the biggest number TNT pulled the other night, 1.9 mil. That's down 7% year over year. Why do you think people are tuning out NBA basketball games? Why do you think the ratings are dipping so hard?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons, Spence, right on the surface. One is that there are so many other options now, and the generation now that's younger than we are been brought up with accessibility to anything they want, anytime they want online and streaming services. And so getting people to focus in on one thing, like an NBA game, even if you're a basketball fan, you have so many other outlets and so many other options to do, unless there's something that's really compelling at that moment to attract your attention. You've got all these other things that you can go and spend your time doing. Another reason, I think, personally, is that I don't think the NBA game is very attractive right now to the average fan. I think it's all, I'm watching the game last night, and I was counting the number of possessions where both teams were running a half-court offense, and there wasn't one player anywhere near the lane. Everybody was out on the perimeter, and it's all drawn kick, and it's all, long-range shooting, and people can't shoot very well. That's why the guys who can shoot, whether it's a Kevin Durant, or Ray Allen in his day, or guys like that, Steph Curry, who are good shooters, that's why they stand out so much, because most guys can't shoot. But what happens, Spence? They do shoot, all right? Because that's what last night I saw several times. I was kind of keeping track in my head how many times I thought that they took a 3-point shot, what we used to phrase by default, meaning I was there, I can take this shot, or I can work for a better shot. There's still 9 seconds on the shot clock, but there's a defender near me, but I'm being lazy, and it doesn't really matter, so here it goes, and just jack it up. And nobody wants to watch that stuff because it looks lazy, in large part because it is lazy, and the players don't work as hard. That's why the announcers last night, kept harping on the fact that Oklahoma City was playing very well, especially on the defensive end, because they're a hard-nosed defensive team who sticks to their principles and shows it by the way that they play. That they force you to do things. We talked about this on one of our earlier segments. If you're a good defensive team, you want to try and be the protagonist. In other words, you want to try and dictate to the offense what they're doing. That's what OKC did last night to the Jazz, which resulted in the Jazz having 29 turnovers, which resulted in 45 points off turnovers for OKC. The Jazz actually shot a better percentage than OKC did for the game from the floor, but the fact was they couldn't hold on to the ball, and they couldn't hold on to the ball because of the pressure of OKC's defense, coupled with the fact that the Jazz are a sloppy and at sometimes lazy ball handling team, and sometimes they're their own worst enemy. How many times last night did they drive into traffic and just stumble around, and the ball came out the other way on a fast break for OKC? But I think, to answer your question, the fans are finding other things to do. I think they don't really like the product as much of the NBA that they're seeing nowadays, with all this 5 out and none in stuff, and people just jacking up shots and a lot of one-on-one kinds of stuff, and I think they're finding other ways to spend their time.
Yeah, the Warriors-Cavs era, the LeBron versus Steph era, the ratings were pretty healthy. They approached 17, 18, 19 mil. Nothing has touched 98 when Jordan was in his last year, and John and Carl, and they were so compelling. And I hate to be the old guy that yells into the microphone, but there was just something about that era of basketball, and maybe I come at it from a selfish perspective with my background of the Jazz and the Knicks when both those teams were so fun and compelling in the 90s. I don't know if it's production value. I don't know if it's characters. I don't know if it's protagonists, antagonists. There was something so compelling about 90s NBA basketball, and even me as a basketball junkie and somebody who will watch random games on a random Tuesday night, I'll tune in and it's like, I'm going to take the dog for a walk. You know, like there's just something about it that is not as compelling as it was when I was growing up in the 90s.
Well, and I think, Spence, again, to date ourselves, right? You're talking about games that are almost 30 years ago. So you're talking about a different generation, and you're talking about all the things that happened between then and now relative to access of information through the internet and laptops and your phone and all those kinds of things. It's interesting that nowadays, what does the NBA do, and what have they done for a while? They market the star players, and they hope that you will tune in on a Tuesday night to see Kevin Durant, go up against LeBron James. Oh, they're both out tonight. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. Oh, they're not playing. Yep. For whatever the reasons, and so, there goes your hook if you're the NBA. It's just that there are a lot of games. There's a lot of content, and there's a lot of that's accessible to the fan. If you're a basketball fan, how many college games were on last night? How many are on tonight?
Yeah.
That you think, well, maybe I'd rather watch that instead. It's just a different era. And look, another part of that equation for me, when you're talking about peeling back the layers, is that when you look at the bench of any team in the NBA now, and they've got more guys in pullovers than they have in uniforms, right? So they've got 17 coaches and analytics guys and whoever those guys are, and doing whatever it is they're doing, and the end product on the floor is not any better, and you could argue that it's worse, and so you wonder what that equation is and how that factors into everything.
One more thing, we'll catch a break. We'll do our second segment, pretty Jazz-centric. Do you think this NBA Cup idea, and I want to be clear, like, I applaud the effort. I applaud and I respect trying to do something different. I really do. I think the NBA does that as well as any league. The NFL doesn't have to adjust anything, right? They're top of the mountain. Major League Baseball might bring a golden bat to the equation. I'm not sure if you've heard about that, but the NBA really tries to be forward-facing and progressive with some changes if things aren't working. It just seems to, the courts are weird, players are slipping. Do you think at some point this will reverberate and maybe improve the interest level during the regular season?
Well, I think one of the things is they're trying, Spencer, and it's going to take a little while for people to hook on to it, but it's the whole cup thing to try and get interest in November and December, in the early months of the season when you're struggling to get attention from fans, and especially in TV viewing. And what's part of the approach you're taking now is what you saw last night in OKC with an all-blue floor, and every team is trying to come up with the new thing that looks cleaner and sharper and hipper on TV and whatever. The product is still the same. The 8 teams that are going to go into the quarterfinals next week of the Cup. All 4 teams in the West are different than they were last year. So those fans get pulled into it a little bit, and then they have the whole Vegas vibe with it at the end, where they'll be playing the semis and the Final Four, so to speak, in Vegas in a few weeks. Will it hold? I don't know. It's better than that than just playing the games, I guess, in early season when people aren't paying attention. I think it's the teams that make it now to these one and done games over the next couple of weeks. Those fans will be interested. The other fans now, like the Jazz fans, for example, couldn't care less what's going on with the NBA Cup because they're not in it, right? So they get a couple of games, and next week they're rescheduled and all that, and you move on. So trying something new. Is it hooking people? I don't know. I guess they'll have TV ratings that'll tell you whether it did or not. I don't know. It's for me, I understand what they're trying to do. I think again, it feels somewhat to some level like a gimmicky type thing. That we're trying and see if if it hooks or not.
All right, coming up next, we'll do a Jazz-centric segment with Smitty. I want to get his take on a conversation that we've had all week about the potentially most exciting prospect of the 6 young players, first and second-year players. We'll see if he agrees with a take that was handed out on the show this week. Smitty today brought to you by Advanced Window Products, the #1 rated window company in Utah. Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, great people, awesome families, local people that want to take care of our community. The sales and installation are all in-house. No middleman markup. They build, install, and guarantee for life. They have a lifetime warranty that is transferable to the next homeowner. So if you're looking to buy or sell a house, this is a great time to call Advanced Window Products. They've got a bunch of rebates, financing available. You can save now and pay later. Winter special this week. It's $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. If you're coming home from work and you walk in the house and it's really cold and your kids have blankets draped all over them, it's probably your window. So give them a call today. You can beat the rush and from the factory to your front door in 8 weeks or less at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com or with Smitty coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Richard Smith, live in studio, 40 years with the Utah Jazz front office. Going to bring in Howard Beck today. We made a little bit of a pivot. Zach Harper is busy, one of my favorite writers, the hippest NBA writer out there. Howard Beck from The Ringer. And then Ali Mata, who is a player for the Utah Hockey Club, just was called up to represent his homeland of Finland. He'll be playing some hockey for Finland. So interviewed Ali before, really nice kid. Stay tuned, hockey fans. It comes your way in about an hour from right now. Oh, Smitty. As we've talked about before, and as I readily admit, we are spoiled basketball fans in this market, and part of it is your fault. And the front office you worked for always seemed to put a very good product on the floor with very, very few exceptions. Now, there were some exceptions, but Scott Layden, Kevin O'Connor, Dennis Lindsay found their way out of what I'll say poor to mediocre basketball very quickly. Oh, by the way, before we do, I can't believe I buried the lead. Paul Millsap retired.
Yes.
Now, I will say I thought he retired 2 years ago. But when I love Paul, who doesn't? But you had a front row seat to, and then we'll get back to the topic that I was just unpacking. But I wanted to ask you this kind of right off the top. I forgot, looking at my notes. Paul caught Jerry's eye as a rookie, which is hard to do. Ask Darren Williams. And, we were kind of having some fun topically, like where does he exist on the all-time great Jazz player list if you include his entire career? Probably top 15, top 16-ish, actually, if you look at the list, but that's a different topic. What was that like to watch Paul kind of evolve, and how would you characterize what he meant to some of those really, really good Jazz teams?
Well, it was interesting with Paul when when the Jazz drafted him. He was we got him in the middle of the I think it's number 47 pick in the middle of the second round, and he came in that summer league. He did okay. Wasn't anything special. Came into training camp. He was really in all honesty, in terms of our group, was just another guy there. Is he gonna make the cut? Is he not gonna make the cut? Are we gonna have him on the team? Are we not? And it was kind of a debate, and it was really kind of, a lot of shrugging shoulders, like whatever, you want him, you don't want him, whatever. And then I remember in the last meeting we had to make a decision, yes or no, to have him on the team that rookie year, and it was Coach Sloan who just said, I kind of like him. And we said, what do you like, Coach? And he go, well, he seems to work hard, and he kind of does this a little bit, and does that. And then he said,
nose for the ball.
He said, but probably maybe his best attribute at the moment is I don't even know what his voice sounds like, because I haven't heard him say one thing. And so Jerry goes, and only the way Jerry could, he goes, so that's pretty good. And so he was saying, well, let's keep him because we don't have to listen to him complain or anything, Yeah, okay, all right, whatever you want to do. And then, and Paul was a good worker, but he was a very quiet guy. And at that time, of course, he came in and was behind Carlos Boozer, who was an all-star level player, an Olympic level player for us. And he had to wait his time, but he just worked hard and developed enough of an outside game that could complement his mid-post game and his ability to rebound. And that was the thing that struck us when the Jazz drafted him, was that he had led the NCAA in rebounding all 3 years that he was at Louisiana Tech. And that's one of the skills usually, Spence, you look at on prospective players. That's the one area where typically you can make a correlation that's going to translate to the NBA level without much of an interruption, is your ability to go get the basketball, off the rim. And Paul made himself into a better player. He was a 4-time All-Star when he was in Atlanta. And Atlanta had some very good teams when he was there, and was just a really good guy to have on your team, because even when he got, quote, good, and he was a regular rotation guy, and then he was a starter, and then he went to Atlanta and became an all-star level guy, he was still the same approach every day. Just, the old Jerry Sloan phrase, a lunch bucket guy, just bring his lunch pail and go to work and not say much. And I know he had stopped playing a couple of years ago, and I think it came out today probably because of the way the NBA works. You can stop playing but you can not officially retire like forever.
Yeah.
You know, you have to put in, if you want the retirement benefits and all the stuff that comes with retirement and pensions and all that. At some point, you have to submit the proper paperwork to the NBA. I'm guessing that's why this came out, you know, the last few days, is probably because they probably decided to put his paperwork in after the last couple of years of maybe sitting on the sidelines waiting to see if he got a last-minute call from somebody in a playoff-type run.
Yeah, more of a role player for you guys early on, and then after Booz bounced and Darren was traded, he was kind of a main cog with those Al Jefferson years. 17 points, 8 boards in 2010. Played all 82, 3 of his first 4 years for you guys, but didn't start many games up until kind of the second iteration. But he reinvented himself after he left here. Were you surprised to watch him shoot like 38% from 3 and kind of expand his horizons after he left the Jazz?
Yes, yeah. I mean, but that's, to his credit, that was something that coaches talked to him about and about being able to be a little more versatile with his offense and being able to step out, and he was willing to do it, and he had enough of a touch, shooting-wise from the free throw line that he could extend it out a little bit. And again, it wasn't a high volume, but it was, him taking smart shots. And most of the time, he was the kind of player who would just go with the flow of what was happening in the game. In other words, he didn't force shots. So most of those kind of three-point shots that he would get would be open shots on the weak side where the defense would sink in, they'd swing it. He got it, had a lot of space, got into a nice little easy rhythm and was able to knock down enough that that made defenders honest against him, and then that set up his ability to go a couple dribbles into the mid lane and get something there. And but he was willing to do that, and that's the kind of guy he was. He was a little bit like Carl in that he was always willing to look at adding something to his game and trying to diversify it that would make him keep him on the floor more and get him more opportunities.
So, look, 50 years of Jazz hoops has bred a lot of simply very loyal Jazz fans, right? Like we were talking about this through the Utah Hockey Club prism. The novelty appears to have worn off, and the past couple of home games, it's not as full as it was opening night when I was there, first couple of games. And some of it's going to depend on opponent because we do have hockey fans who live here. But if you go to Utah Hockey Club games and if they're playing like the Avalanche, you see a lot of Avalanche jerseys. So for the Utah Hockey Club to consistently draw people to sell out the building, they're going to have to be really good really quickly like the Vegas Golden Knights were, or it's just going to take a number of years like it did with the Jazz. Very lean years early, Salt Palace, shout out Jazz Band, all the things. But 50 years of Jazz basketball has bred a lot of loyal Jazz fans, and there have been so many really, really good teams and exciting teams, never over the hump to win a championship. And this is a tough ask, even for loyal Jazz fans. This is as bad of a team as we've ever had here, and maybe the worst team that we've ever had here. So what do you make of, and look, the problem is, and you and I both know this, of course this is by design, but we can't turn on a mic and say, hey, they're trying to lose, we'll talk to you tomorrow. We have to kind of unpack it a little bit. It is a tough ask of a community to show up night in and night out, and road games, turn on your television. Yes, we're in a cold weather city. You want something to do at night, turn on a Jazz game, go to a Jazz game. I get all that. But there has to be some sort of pushback from a lot of fans who are watching this product night in and night out and say, what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think what's happened, I think the first couple of years here of the Ryan Smith and his group, ownership group, taking control of the team from the Miller family. They've made a lot of changes. Obviously, they've made changes all the way across the board, with the team itself, with the coaching staff, the front office, the building, the uniforms. I mean, they've changed everything from A to Z that they can think of, trying to get it younger, trying to get it hipper, trying to get it more whatever the marketing approach is. And I think some of that, fans have bought into. We're trying to get. That's a kind of change. It's kind of new. Okay, but now they're right near that point, I believe, where they're in the third year of doing this, and the team does not look like it's getting any better.
It's getting worse.
They've invested a lot. Well, they've invested a lot in young guys, and that's the route they've chosen to go for whatever their rationale is. They believe they can build that up. They've got to hit on the right draft picks. We just played a team last night in OKC. They're showing how you can do it if you hit the right guys and add guys in, and how you can rebuild a team. That they did that when they had the Paul George fiasco and had to move on from that and kind of bottomed out. And then you see what the Houston Rockets have done once they moved on from James Harden and Westbrook and Chris Paul, and now they've bottomed out, and now they've got a nice competitive team, young guys, and they've had several good draft picks, and that's what the Jazz are trying to do. Several of the top 5, 6, 7 teams in the NBA right now, if you include OKC, if you include Houston as a young team, if you include the Orlando Magic, all these teams were bottom feeders, Spence, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they've all built up by drafting smartly and putting together a roster that makes sense. The Jazz are trying to do that. They've got a bunch of draft picks they're trying to play. They're a bunch of guys who in my opinion, the way I look at them, when they're playing, I think, well, these guys, they're supposed to be doing this at the G League. They're supposed to be throwing the ball up in the third row in a G League game, not in an NBA game. But they're force-feeding them. They're making them play against NBA guys. They think that's gonna get them hardened and develop quicker and all of that. That remains to be seen. The guys they have, I don't think, again, my opinion, that it's a good mix of guys. I don't like the just how they play off each other or don't play off each other. The defensive end is very worrisome to me because defensively they just have not gotten any better from last year to this year. Statistically, they're in the same. They're bottom 5 in all these different categories. And you watch them last night. They play defense. Their defense is very lazy. And I'll give you 2 examples from last night that really struck out at me. The last play of the first half, they come down. OKC has the ball. They're walking it up the floor to get the last shot with like 15 seconds left in the first half. The Jazz don't switch. They don't match up properly. They've got Walker Kessler guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the last play of the first half, and everybody's just standing around, and they're leaving Walker Kessler out on an island, and there's no way he can guard that guy who's an MVP level player and wing player, and he just rises up and shoots right over him and drills a 3 at the end. Then in the second half, they're in secondary transition, and they're coming back over half court. And Kessler's looking for someone, his guy, to guard, and Keontae George points to Alexander and just says, like to Walker, hey, you get him, and I go, and I'm watching the game, I'm going, you get him, you're telling your 7-foot center to go guard MVP wing player? I said, when you have time to go get, no, why is that? My opinion is that they're just lazy. And so, hey, you get him. I don't want to have to run another 10 feet and go guard the guy I'm supposed to be guarding, so you get him. And the same thing. And Alexander played around with them, boom, boom, between the legs, step in the lane, little step back, jumper from the free throw line. How you doing? That's, they look like they're a lazy defensive team. It doesn't look like that they're being called out on it. I'm sure they work on it in practice. I'm sure they drill on it. I'm sure they talk about it. I'm sure they watch film about it. But in the game, they're making the same mistakes, and they're making the same errors in judgment. They don't approach it with any kind of urgency, and that's why you get 29 turnovers in the game. Albeit against a very good defensive team who caused some of those, but that's because you're careless, you're lazy, you don't really play with that fortitude that you need to be able to secure the ball, and that leads to 45 points off turnovers for the other team. And while that's egregious and that's That's a big example, and maybe but it's not, unfortunately, an outlier. That is the type of thing that's been happening all along, and that's why the Jazz are sitting, with the third worst record in the league at 4-17, and with a lot of road games coming up here in December.
So Cody Williams, who's the highest pick they made this last draft, at number 10 out of Colorado, get some time early on. It didn't look great. It looked, well, I'll be honest, it looked bad. He badly needs to get stronger. He's only 19 years old. He will fill out. He will put on weight. Time will tell what he will be. I'm not ready to anoint or dismiss at all. Taylor goes down. Will elects to start Cody, and you're watching. You're like, dude, it's not working. So they send him down to the G League to develop. Now, that's what the G League is for. So I get it. And to your point, all of these guys, maybe outside of marketing and the vets, could utilize some G League minutes. We'll get to Walker in a minute, who, in fairness, has been really, really good. I do want to talk Walker Kessler. But don't you want your top 10 pick to show some signs of being ready to at least show that he at least belongs? I mean, there was nothing from Cody at all. And what do you make of the fact that the highest pick they made in the draft last year is now cutting his teeth in the G League?
Yeah, well, that's what the game plan that they have for these guys. They're bringing them in, and they're throwing them to the wolves, and they're saying, hey, go figure it out. And with the Williams kid, I don't know what he's going to end up being. Maybe he's going to be a top level player. That obviously that stuff remains to be seen. For me, when I saw him at Colorado last year, his 1 year there in college, and what I've seen in the handful of games he's played in the summer league, both in Salt Lake and Vegas, and then here in early part of the NBA season, he doesn't play with any sense of urgency. Doesn't play with any sense of pop or toughness. He's long, he's rangy. Yeah, okay. So what? You have to figure out how you utilize that to your advantage. He had a couple of plays, and by a couple I mean 2 or 3 or 4 plays in the summer league action where you said, "Whoa, now that's good." Mm-hmm. Now that's okay. Took it off the bounce, went by 2 guys, went up over a third guy, boom. And banged it on his head, and okay, that's what you want to see out of those guys, but he has not shown that, and so that is going to be interesting as you pick on one guy, Spence, for a moment, because that is the part of a guy's game that is very hard to develop, and that is that aggressiveness, the tough-minded mindset that, by the way, his brother has. Now, maybe his brother has all of it. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a big-time player.
And that's the way he plays. Maybe the Jazz took him thinking, we can develop him to be some form of his brother. We're talking about Jalen Williams, who plays for OKC, who's developed quickly in the NBA as a very good main guy on a winning team who makes winning plays. But you haven't seen that from Cody Williams. Keontae George has played somewhat okay in spurts for the Jazz. Again, for me, it seems like they're trying to put a round peg in a square hole with him. I don't think he's a point guard. They seem like they're trying to make him one, or they believe he can be one. I think he can be more of a small scoring 2, a la Jordan Clarkson, and then you can cheat with him in games in little spurts by putting him at 1 when you have other matchups that you want to take advantage of. But having a steady diet of him, or a steady diet of like the other young kid they've got, Collier, who also had 4 turnovers last night in limited minutes. I mean, this is what they've set up to do, and they're willing to live with the pain of it. The interesting thing is going to be how they can keep selling that to the fans to say, hey, give us time. You're going to see some improvement, because at some point the clock is ticking and you have to see some improvement. You're not asking them to go from a 30-win team to a 56-win team overnight, but you have to see some improvement in the way they play. And so far, through this experiment, it's very hard to hang your hat on anything that you can say, yeah, there's the incremental improvements we're looking for.
Well, and there's also a fine line between young players learning tough lessons and learning bad habits. And suddenly this is who you are. Because I can remember, when Kevin O'Connor, when Booz left for Chicago, trade exception, Minnesota, bring in Al Jefferson. And that's when Paul Millsap went from a bench player to a starter. And look, that team was never going to win a trophy, but it was competitive and it was a playoff team. And I can remember I was on air at that time talking about, well, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with making the playoffs. There's nothing wrong with maximizing your good. Yes, is there a little bit of a dynamic when you're going to be in the middle? Yeah, and at some point you probably do have to break it down in the name of building it back up like Dennis did. But what's the danger of 7 players under the age of 23 who at this point really only know pro basketball is getting their heads kicked in every night? Like, what's the danger in taking this approach?
Well, one of the dangers is that you get used to it, and there's not a lot of accountability for what the end result is. In other words, I make mistakes. I throw the ball out of bounds. I have 5 turnovers. I have 3 of them are what we would term unforced turnovers. They were just bad decisions. And then the next day, you go back out and you start doing it again. And there's no accountability that says your limits, your minutes are going to be limited, or you're not going to get as many opportunities, or you're going to have to go to the G League, or whatever it is. And so those things, at some point, you have a certain level of professional pride that has to come into play where you don't accept that from yourself as a player, and you determine for yourself, I've got to get better, I've got to figure this out. Or the other part of it, Spence, is that maybe everyone finds out at some point, oh, maybe he's not good enough to do this. Mm-hmm. And maybe we have to look at plan B or plan C or whatever it's going to be, because we didn't make the right decision in this regard, if that's what it comes to. But making the same mistake over and over again and not correcting it and not being held accountable for it in some regard, it's just it's tough to watch. It's tough to understand how a team gets in these positions. But look, Spencer, the Jazz aren't the only team. There are a lot of teams that deal with this from year to year, and a lot of teams that keep wallowing around. The interesting thing is going to be how long they stick with their game plan, and do they really believe in what they've set up to do to be able to stick with it and work through it, because these are, as we've mentioned before, these are the low times for the Jazz, and these are the growing pains. And, can it get worse? I don't know. Maybe it can get worse. Obviously, it certainly can get better, and it needs to get better. But how long that takes to happen and how you go about doing it is going to be interesting. Last night, the second quarter, the Jazz come out of their timeout, and their second starting lineup for the beginning of the second quarter: Mikhailiuk, Eubanks, Sensabaugh, Juzang, Collier.
Stop it.
That's the starting 5 in the NBA game last night. That's supposed to be the starting 5 for the Stars G League team on Saturday night.
Yep.
I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? And then I didn't understand this part, Spence. And again, maybe they were working on something. Sometimes coaches do this near the end of games that are out of hand. I understand if that was the mindset. I think they were playing a zone for a couple possessions. Maybe that's what they were kind of live working. But 5 minutes left in the game, they're down 27, and they put in their starting 5. They put in, Collins, Kessler, Markkanen, Sexton, George. They're in there with 5 minutes to go on the court, down 27.
Yeah.
If you're running a developmental thing, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to do the thing with the zone defense, or trying to see how these. I don't know, but that's all part of it. But it's hard. It's hard to explain to fans who are paying money that we're just practicing with this stuff now, and we're asking you to pay full price, to watch that live. That's a tough sell that they've gotten away with so far, and it's going to be interesting to see how long it goes on for before there's some kind of pushback from fans of saying, hey, when are we getting better? When is this going to happen? What do you got for me? Because I'm investing my time and money in you, but I don't see what I'm getting out of it. That's going to be the interesting part if you're a Jazz fan and if you're at the Jazz front office and the ownership group.
We'll end on a positive note because there's not a lot of positive things to talk about with this current iteration of the Jazz, but I will say Walker has been very good in the 15 games he's played. He's at 11 points, 11 boards, nearly 3 block shots. His rim protection is elite. The opponent field goal percentage against him at the rim is not good, which is good for the Jazz. Want to see that free throw percentage up, 58% from the free throw line, but 74% from the floor. And just looking at him, watching him play, he looks bigger, he looks stronger, and I think I would say he's been the main bright spot for me through 15 games. I mean, one of the debates we keep having is who's going to be here when the Jazz are actually legitimately good and a serious team, serious about winning. Walker seems to have maybe played himself into that conversation throughout the first portion of the season. What have you seen from Walker Kessler?
And I would agree with you. And this is his third year, right? So at the beginning of his third year, he looks like he's developing into a comfort level where he understands what he can do and what they want him to do and not trying to do too much, right? He's averaging 29 minutes a game, averaging 11 points, 10 rebounds, almost 3 blocks. If you were to say, hey, we would take that. We would take that for the next 7, 8, 10 years and put that in our lineup and have our big man do that. Okay, we'll lock that in. Okay, now we've locked Markkanen in. Okay, on a long-term deal. So now we got 2 of those guys that we like, that we're comfortable that they're going to be those guys in those positions. Now we're trying to find out, what the other ones are and where they're coming from. But I like what he's done. I like the fact that the game looks like it's slowed down a little bit for him, that he feels comfortable being in the spots that he's in, and he's delivering, and he seems to me just to be playing a little more comfortably out there, which is what you want to see, and that's all part of the developmental process. That's what we saw in Rudy when Rudy made his incremental progress until his 4th year, when he started busting out, and maybe that's what's happening with Kessler.
Smitty, great to see you, my friend. Did you have a favorite ride in Disneyland? Was there one that stood out?
Hey, we went on It's a Small World.
No, that can't be your favorite.
And we broke the ride. We were sitting there for 15 minutes because they couldn't figure out. And we're going, wait a minute, all these other rides are spinning and jumping and throwing you in the air and doing all this stuff. And we're on the slowest ride that you can be on. And the ride breaks and we're sitting there in limbo for 15 minutes. But, look, Spence, my days of going through those things where they're throwing you around and jumping up and down and you're swinging you around or whatever. I used to enjoy those.
Okay.
But I'm like the fair weather fan going to the game right now. I can't do those anymore. I did them, but I realized, okay, I that's exactly right. Yes, and
it's a small as a seasoned Disney vet, Smitty. It's a Small World is the ride you take when you need a nap between all the other rides.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
There we go.
Hey, great to see you. Okay,
hey, babe.
The great Richard Smith, 40 years with the Jazz front office. Howard Beck's going to roll by from the Ringer. Got to tell you about my friends at Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Okay, so it's easy. If you've never tried to gamble on sports before, you don't have to worry about over, under, or spread or whatever money line. All you do is pick more or less on 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So we'll use the Jazz for an example. Walker Kessler, more or less than 2.5 blocks. Lauri Markkanen, more or less than 19.5 points. Things like that. It's very, very easy. They're giving away free money, so go grab that and see if you like it. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly. After you play your first $5 lineup, download the app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. all season long. Howard Beck is next right here on ESPN 700. We got Ali Mata on the show today from the Utah Hockey Club. Utah Hockey Club is off all week long, back in action coming up on Saturday. Ali's been called up to play for Finland, his home country. So exciting news for him. Bill Riley joined us earlier. Richard Smith, 40 years with the Jazz front office, but time now to bring in, yes, like it or not, he is the hippest NBA writer out there. Always good to chat with Howard Beck on a Wednesday. Howard, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
Spence, how are you? I still protest. I'm not that hip, but I will put on the best possible version of that for your audience that I can.
Howard, we've been over it. All the NBA writers are nerds. It's not like that big of a compliment. I mean, ultimately, you don't have a lot of challengers on the list. You know what I mean?
It's a low bar, and you did bring me into the war on drugs, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that. What does Thanksgiving look like for Howard Beck? I got to know.
Well, we have a standing tradition of going to the Thanksgiving Day parade, even though for most of my life I was sort of anti-parade. Parades are a little silly, frankly, especially on TV. But being there in person, it's different. It is kind of magical, and you're out there with a lot of other people, like literally thousands of other people. And we started doing it when our daughter was small. We lived with another family when their daughters were small, and then it just became kind of a standing thing. We did it, presumably you're doing it for the kids, and then eventually you kind of enjoy it for your own reasons. And now our kids are 18, but we went anyway in the rain and watched some balloons go by and all that stuff. And then our friends are kind enough to actually host us for Thanksgiving because our families are not here. My wife and our families are back in California, so we have never done Thanksgiving with our families for the last 20 years. So we do the Friendsgiving thing, and great time. Hope yours was as well.
Yeah, it was. I was actually back in your neck of the woods, back in Fairfield County. Spent a little time in Manhattan, but good to be back on the ground. And we're not going to do a lot of Jazz because there's just not a lot to talk about with the Utah Jazz right now. But I'm just going to ask you, generally speaking, watching them and look, OKC is awesome. They're really good, but the Jazz are 26th in offense. They're 30th in defense. They're 4-17. And there's a fine line between teaching young players lessons via competition against the varsity and then allowing losing to seep in as part of your identity. What's the danger? Because they said at the start of the season, Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge, they said player development, we're playing the young kids, and they're playing the young kids. They're getting their heads kicked in. What sort of danger is there with this approach as far as, wanting to make sure that these young, some of them very talented players don't become completely accustomed to getting their heads kicked in every night?
It's funny because I've thought about this a lot, and I've had conversations with people occasionally about this, and it is something I kind of want to dig deeper into at some point, just the psychological side of this, and whether teams, how much they grapple with this. I mean, look at the Wizards right now. They're 2-17. They've lost 15 games in a row. None of it is surprising. They were engineered to do this. This was definitely going to be a tanking year, and it's year two of their tanking and teardown since their new administration under Michael Winger arrived, right? Like they tore off the Band-Aid. They traded Bradley Beal. They went young. They went whatever, all that stuff. And the Nets are supposed to be doing that, and they're kind of screwing up their whole tank job. The Jazz have been kind of stealth tanking the last couple of years, or not quite tanking, and now it looks like they finally are, in a position where, okay, cool, let's just go get the best pick we can. I think if I had to guess, not being a psychologist myself or a GM, I think if you're a team that has young talent and you're giving them all the rope in the world and all the reps in the world to develop, get a feel for the NBA and for who you are and for what your possibilities and limitations are and all that, you can do that for a year or maybe two. I think beyond that, when you start getting into what the Sixers were doing during the process era, 10 years ago, that's when I think you're in danger of, well, now there's just a malaise hanging over everybody. Now there are no expectations. Now everybody just expects to lose, and bad habits are more easily seep in because if so, this is the fine line. Let's take it through the prism of a single player, especially a single player who's a primary ball handler type. You can go get your numbers every night. You can just put up all the shots you want. You could be, at his worst at times here in Brooklyn, Cam Thomas, right? maybe Jordan Poole at times, although it hasn't been nearly what we thought it might be in Washington. But if you want to just go get yours and you got the ball in your hands a lot and you're great at taking guys off the dribble, you can score inefficiently, but you can put up numbers and you can play for your next contract, and you could say, screw it, we're not winning anyway. I'm just going to get mine. That's the danger, that and not having any expectations of winning, maybe bad work habits too, but the right coach can keep guys on task. And I think you've got that in Utah with Will Hardy, and I think the Nets have that with Jordy Fernandez. That's why they're overachieving right now. So I think it's possible to be tanking and still instill the right values and standards in your franchise. But I do think the danger becomes if you do this as a multi-year thing. And again, like I think that malaise can set in.
So the G League is designed for development, and I understand that. And look, I think there are a lot of players on the Jazz roster that could utilize some minutes in the G League, but the highest draft pick they made last year was Cody Williams at 10. And, after Taylor Hendricks broke his leg, Will elected to start Cody, and it just looked horrible. There was really just nothing there at all on either side, offense or defense. And look, there are players that have spent time in the G League. There's the Rudy Goberts, the Pascal Siakams, the Danny Greens, the Jonathan Kumingas. So I'm not saying that this should overly concern Jazz fans, but as a top 10 pick, you just hope that he shows a little bit more. And he's 19. I mean, look, like I said, just a kid. But what do you make of that dynamic, a top 10 pick, now, spending time in the G League in order to get some minutes as opposed to him learning next to the rest of the young kids that are still up with the Jazz?
People have, I think, very different philosophies about this around the league. Some people feel like, if you're not playing at the NBA level, if you're not in the rotation, then you're better off just getting as many reps as you can. And if you play in the G League, at least you are getting a chance to compete and be in game situations. There are others who actually think there's more value, maybe not more value, but a different kind of value to if you're the 14th or 15th man, but you're with the big league club, right? It's different. You've got you get specialized attention from the coaching staff, more hands-on. And even though we've got a lot of, mostly one-to-one now relationships between NBA clubs and G League teams, and you can instruct or direct your G League staff, hey, this is what we need this player to do for the next couple of games in the next couple of weeks. There's nothing like having the head coach and his staff have hands-on a daily basis in practice. And so, there's a certain amount, too, that you just learn by observation of if you were, the Jonathan Kumingas and Moses Moody's, right, of the Warriors of the last several years, right, being on that bench and in that locker room with, Draymond and Steph and Clay, there's a value to that I'm not saying it's better than being in the G League and actually playing, but it's different. And, of course, the Warriors, I think, to their credit, during that time, were also sending those guys down to the G League as much as they could. And so I think it's a balance. I kind of lean on the side of if the guy's not playing at the NBA level, if he's not in the rotation regularly, you might as well get him down to the G League as often as possible. And, and some teams, if the proximity is conducive to it, you can also have them do what a lot of teams do, which is bounce back and forth as much as possible.
Last Jazz-related question, then we'll move on, because ultimately, there are some vets on the roster that I think could help out contending teams down the stretch. And I'm not a John Collins guy, but I'll say that John's played pretty well early on in the season. And, it seems like every time somebody writes the piece on, hey, which teams could be active come trade deadline, the Jazz are brought up because they do have some vets like Collins and Sexton and Clarkson. And the bottom line is they were willing to trade those guys this summer, so that's not breaking news. But if you're an opposing GM and you have a team that you think is good but a piece or two away and you want to vet, do any of these Jazz players catch your eye at all?
They do. It's going to be – so the broad answer here before getting into the details of it is I don't know how the second apron and all this new CBA stuff is going to affect this trade season. This will be the first trade season where all of the new limitations are in effect and things are kind of tight, and there are a lot of teams that don't have much wiggle room, and team might think like, oh, John Collins would be a great asset for us, or Jordan Clarkson would be great for us, but they just might not be able to pull it off. just logistically and cap-wise. And so I don't know what effect that might have. But that said, John Collins, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, any number of guys on that roster, I think could be of interest. The fact that John Collins still has a player option, so essentially one more year after this season, I can't imagine he's going to decline his player option at $27 million. I don't think he's getting that again next summer. So a team, if they're acquiring him in particular, and you're right, he's having kind of a rebound year or a resurgence. Does a team want to take him on at that number, knowing that they've got another full season at that number? I don't know, but I do think that the Jazz will be at a minimum active in discussions. That's kind of a no-brainer. And I think, for sure, teams are going to be sniffing around to see who's available.
So moving off the Jazz specifically, this is somewhat related, but I do want to ask you about the Timberwolves. This is the year where the return of the Gobert and Mitchell trade start paying dividends for the Jazz, namely a first-round pick from Minnesota this year. And, of course, the Jazz are doing everything they can to hold on to their own draft capital so they don't have to give it away to OKC like everybody else. But are these early average performances from Minnesota troubling? Is there a chance maybe the Jazz actually luck into a decent draft asset from the T-Wolves this year?
I think the Timberwolves are going to be okay. I was not a big fan of the Cat trade from their side of it, because going from Towns to Randall was a clear downgrade. And everybody loved what DiVincenzo did for the Knicks last year, and he hasn't quite found that same rhythm with Minnesota. But you needed the DiVincenzo piece of that trade to be so good that it made up for the downgrade from Towns to Randall. And so I'm not entirely. I can't say I'm shocked that they're struggling. I'm surprised that they're struggling as much as they are. But also, Mike Conley's 37, and not. He still has some great moments, but he's missed some games. He's not as effective as he once was. They don't really have another point guard who's ready to take over. The rookie Dillingham has had a moment here and there, but I think he's more of a scorer than a setup guy at this stage. To the point of the draft pick, my guess is that when all is said and done, the Timberwolves are a playoff team, and probably a straight up playoff team and not a play-in team. One thing that's interesting is I look at the standings real quick. So they're in 11th in the West right now. But if you look at point differential, which the advanced stats guys will tell you is more indicative of a team's true abilities, there are 3 teams ahead of them that have actually 4 teams ahead of them that have worse point differentials, which suggests that things are going to even out and Minnesota's going to leapfrog some of those teams.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. Now, the piece of draft capital that's coming their way that will not be good is Cleveland. And I wanted to, it's kind of a funny dynamic here, Howard. We've never really seen one of our star players leave here and go, kill it. Darren, after he was traded, did not have great years, as you know, with the Nets. Unfortunately, Gordon Hayward snapped his leg in half. But Donovan this year, and look, he has questions to answer. By his own admission comes springtime. But as I'm watching them, I watched the Celtic game the other night. There is a level up feel with Donovan this year, and the Cavs are 19-3. How real is this start, and what are you seeing from Mitchell?
He's been awesome. Yeah. I mean, he's just been great. Are Jazz fans rooting for him weirdly, or are they resentful that he's having this kind of success?
I think it depends on the Jazz fans you ask, and what, I'll just leave it there. There's definitely we could take a few steps deeper into that category, which we will not. I very much cheer for him because he's a good kid, and I appreciated the time he spent here. I was disappointed that it ended prematurely, but I'll just speak for myself. I watched the Cavs because I cheer for Donovan.
Yeah, he's been awesome. And look, I've known Kenny Atkinson for years, going back to when he was assistant coach for Mike D'Antoni with the Knicks, and then when Kenny was out here coaching the Nets. And I've got really high regard for him. And I thought I was curious to see, given that they didn't make substantial changes to the roster, was Atkinson going to be able to come in, take a team that has again, you and I have talked about this. I think there's a lot of duplication between Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, and even a little bit of kind of awkward fit between the two bigs, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And Kenny's a very offensive-minded coach who's coached under, Steve Kerr and Mike D'Antoni and Tyronn Lue and Rick Adelman. Like he's got a great, just resume himself of the guys he's learned from. And I thought maybe he's the one to unlock them. And it's very much what has happened there. I also just think there's a comfort level that comes after a while. Like these guys have gotten used to each other a little bit. And they're for real. 19-3, you don't get that by accident. Even though the early part of their schedule was definitely a little soft, they built up some momentum. But 19-3 is never an accident, and so they're legit by definition. Whether they're good enough to beat the Celtics 4 times in a 7-game series, like that's the only question that matters, right? Like unless somebody else is going to knock out the Celtics first, eventually this is going to be. Are the Cavaliers good enough to beat Boston? And I don't know if anybody's good enough to beat Boston.
Yeah, I'm in the Boston and everybody else can myself, but I do want to ask you about the Knicks. Watching them run Orlando off the floor last night. Orlando's been a fun story this year. And like you, I was not a huge fan of Minnesota trading for Randall, but I'm not a big Cat guy either with the way that Thibodeau likes to coach, although Tom has had Cat before. And I would say the results have been mixed, but what are you willing to say right now about the early returns and where the Knicks are at after 21 games?
They're fine, right? Like they've been up and down. They've caught a little bit momentum recently. They certainly like blowing out Orlando last night. Like no discredit to what the Knicks are or have accomplished, but like you realize the Magic have been in New York at that point for like a week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because. It was the weirdest thing. I don't think I've ever seen this in all my years of covering the NBA. They were here for 2 games against the Nets, Friday and Sunday. So they came in like before Thanksgiving. And then like by the time they played the Knicks last night, like, what happens when players are in New York for too long.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the Knicks are really good. And I think Towns and Brunson have found their stride together. I think the challenge for the Knicks this season, last I checked, I think they were number 1 in offense, but they're like 22, 23 or something in defensive efficiency. And so the challenge for them is kind of like what it was for the Nuggets a couple years back when they won the championship, which was, well, Jokic is really good and Karl-Anthony Towns is not Jokic and nobody on the Knicks is Jokic. But Karl-Anthony Towns, Nikola Jokic, offensive-minded bigs who are not going to give you classic rim protection from your 7-footer. So can you build a different kind of defense, in a respectable defense, top 10-ish? And the Nuggets eventually did because of Aaron Gordon and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and they kind of like built their defense from the outside in. And I think that's where the Knicks are right now, right? OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart. If you are solid enough on the perimeter, you don't put as much pressure on your bigs, and you don't need the classic rim protection in the way that we usually think about it in the NBA. Can they get there? I don't know. And then we're waiting on Mitchell Robinson, right? Like he's presumably due back maybe in January, but like the Knicks have not exactly been very, straightforward about all that. We don't know when he's coming back. When Mitchell Robinson does come back, can he stay healthy? Because he's been hurt almost every year of his career. He's missed a ton of games. Are they playing him next to Cat, or are they still starting Towns and then bringing Mitchell Robinson off the bench behind him? Like those are all really interesting questions, and I don't know the answer to them. But again, the Knicks are in that group of teams that really, really good, great talent. I don't know if there's enough there to beat the Celtics 4 times.
For sure. Howard, thanks for the time, my friend. Thanks for hopping on. I'm glad you had a great Thanksgiving, and have a good week, man. We'll chat soon, okay?
Appreciate it, Spence. Talk soon.
All right, my guy Howard Beck from The Ringer. I'm telling you, if you're an NBA fan, he's the best in the business. At Howard Beck. Does most of his posting on Blue Sky these days, but he still is on Elon's X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. All right, we're going to do a little hockey coming up next. Ali Mata, who was just called up to play a little hockey for his homeland in Finland, is going to stop by. Ryan from the Dish Pros joins us now. Affordable options for wireless internet, cable television, in addition to internet options, too. Just give him a call at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, thanks so much as always. Just doing our thing, making people the best deal out there for TV. And Guys, saving people money is our favorite thing to do, and you just got to call us up. Listen, if you're having problems with your system, or you're not getting the content you want, or maybe you're just lined up with all these streaming apps and it's not quite as good as you want because you don't have the DVR function that you really enjoy, call us up. Get the best of both worlds. Get the best receiver out there, the world's best DVR. Like, this thing is super fast, auto hops commercials, auto records your games, auto records the local channels for you. You get the streaming built into the system, so you can have access to all the streaming apps. Netflix and YouTube and Amazon Video Prime are built in. You know, Netflix is kind of one of those things a lot of people already have, and why don't we just save you money there? We'll throw in Netflix free for the next 2 years, along with 2 years worth of huge credits, throw in some movie channels, and also price guarantee. The price will not change for the next 2 years. Guys, what we see, $70 to $100+ a month. Call us up. If you've got a big TV bill with DirecTV or Dish or cable, call us and let us work out these new customer deals. They're there to entice you to come over, and it's just money in your pocket plus a great upgrade. We take care of everything. If you're worried about your internet solution, we've got half a dozen internet providers available, and I'll tell you, it's more and more prevalent that most people don't know. There's a couple different internet providers that are available in their area. Call us. We've got solutions for all that. Even one of the providers is offering a free 50-inch TV or $150 gift card, your choice. Call us and take the upgrade. Get the best system out there. Ask about the mobile deals too. You can use the same cell towers, pay a different provider, and pay $30 a month per line less, and get a free iPhone 16 Pro or the new Samsung S24 free with no trade-in. It's super easy. Call us up. We get you set up with a new phone. It shows up at your house. Your number ports right over, and especially if you got 3 or 4 lines, guys, that's $100 a month right there. It's just that easy. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Bros. Little Utah Hockey Club conversation coming up next with Ali Mata. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. We get back to some college football conversation coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. It is the early signing day for college football. Does not land the way that it used to back in the day prior to the transfer portal, so stay tuned for that. But let's do a little hockey now. The Utah Hockey Club is off actually all week. Good to have Ali Mata back on the program on a Wednesday. Ali, happy Wednesday, sir. How you doing?
Really good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate the time today. So how rare is this for you guys to have this amount of time off? You don't play again until Saturday. I mean, this must be kind of a nice break for you, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. I think last 6-7 games we've had quite the stretch. I think it might be the toughest of the season we just got through, and having 4 days, you can kind of reset, see where you're at, and work on a couple of things.
So I probably buried the lead. Some exciting news came down today that the Finnish Ice Hockey Association has announced that you're going to play for your home country at the Four Nations Face-Off in February. So I have to say congratulations. Tell us about this. Tell us about this tournament. What does it mean to you to be called up to play for Finland?
Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's awesome. It's always an honor. It's going to be probably the first time since the World Cup 2017, best against best. I think everybody's excited. The hockey world's excited about this. I think us as players, we're really excited. Fans are excited. It's been a while since we've seen the best players put their national team jerseys on and go at it.
So is this tournament looks like it's going to be February 12th through the 20th, and it is Canada, Finland, Sweden, and the U.S. Is this a tournament that you've played in before, or is this your first experience with it?
No, this is the first time they're doing it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
We used to be a part of Olympics. 2014 was the last time the NHL players went to Olympics. So after that, 2017, they made up World Cup of Hockey, which is kind of similar concept, couple more teams. And now finally they're trying to bring back more best on best in national team hockey, because that was always a big part for me when I was growing up as a kid, watching Team Finland play against Sweden, Russia, Canada, U.S., Czech, and I think we've been missing that last couple of years since we haven't been part of Olympics. So I think everybody wants to have a tournament like that back. Basketball has it, Olympics most of the time. So and for hockey, that's always been one of the biggest ones that people like to see.
Who's the biggest rival for Finland? Who's the biggest hockey rival for you guys?
I think it's always been Sweden.
Always Sweden.
Being
okay.
neighbors, and we've had some tough matches against them. We have tough losses. We actually had some really good big wins against them. It's kind of a love-hate relationship we got. I actually, any Swedish guy I know, I like him a lot, but whenever you play against him, there's something different about it.
Love it. I wonder what your experience has been like, Ali, out here in Salt Lake since you were traded in October. How do you like the market? How do you like the city?
I'm loving it. I think city's awesome. I had actually no idea what to expect because like you don't really hear anything about it. Nobody's been here before. There wasn't a team. Usually when you get traded, you get a little idea what the city's like, all the little things, but you kind of have to start from the scratch and kind of figure it out on your own. But I'm loving it. I think there's a good atmosphere here. Organization is great. You can see the difference they've made since moving from Arizona. I really think we got a good thing going on here.
Does it remind you of home at all? I mean, Finland is a 4 distinct season spot, and it does get cold. Does Salt Lake remind you of home at all?
Yeah, with the seasons wise, yes. And I miss the winter, so this is nice. At the same time, you do get a lot of sun, which we don't really do in Finland over the winter, so that's a big plus too.
I'm assuming you guys aren't allowed to ski. Is that correct?
Yeah, no. I actually grew up skiing a little bit back home, but since I started taking hockey seriously, I've dropped that. Maybe when I'm done, I go back to it.
Do you miss it at all?
Yeah, especially in a place like this when there's so many runs close to you. You definitely want to go out there and do it, but at the same time, I really like hockey too.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd give up skiing if I could be a pro athlete. So I think it's the right choice for now. Hey, I wonder how you would characterize. I mean, you've been in the league for a while. You know, you've won a Stanley Cup, and it did seem like the team needed some help on defense, which is why they made the trade. How do you feel like the progress is going? You know, you guys will have a couple of really, really exciting games. You smoke Vegas, and then you come home and lose to a good Dallas team, but it has been a little bit up and down, Ollie. From your vantage point, how would you characterize the progress of the hockey club so far?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we play better than the results are indicating sometimes, and we just can't seem to find a way to win those 1-goal games, or we haven't lately. And I'm actually really confident we can change that. We're playing good hockey. There's obviously things we want to get better at, but overall it's going in the right direction. And I think the trust and confidence in this room, like how good we can be, like we were in Vegas that night. We beat some really good teams, and obviously that Dallas game, that's one of those that I felt like we could have turned, maybe won that game, and we ended up losing by 1 goal. And it's just games like that, you just have to find a way to win them if you want to be a good team and successful. But I do trust that we have the group we have, like we have that in us.
So when you guys win, when you're playing well, what stands out? What do you do well when you guys are winning games, and what do you feel like you struggle with when the results aren't going your way?
Well, I think we're a tough team to play against. Honestly, like I don't think we give up a lot of time and space. It feels like when you play against us, it just feels like we're coming in on top the whole time. There's not a lot of room to make plays, and when things kind of break down, I think we're giving odd man rushes. I think it's just that offense off the rush. Like sometimes when we get a little lazy or little miscues happen, we give up a little bit too of an easy offense, and that comes off the rush usually. But when we're on our game, like a lot of teams can't really break out against us. We're a really good forechecking team. We got guys who can skate. We got lots of skill. We're not afraid to make plays, and it's exciting. It's exciting to be part of.
Is it challenging to have the goalie situation be split like it is, or do you like that you have two options behind you?
I think you like that. It doesn't matter who's in net. You know, you're trusting them. You know, they're going to make the saves for you to go and win the game. They're always going to give you a chance. So I think it's a big advantage.
All right, Ollie, before I set you loose, you know, we've had a bunch of hockey club guests on the show, and, you know, obviously following the team, it feels like most people believe that you have the talent on the team to maybe compete for a playoff spot down the stretch. Now, like I said, it's been a little bit up, been a little bit down, but, you know, like the Dallas game, you put like 36 shots on goal. Just one needs to find the back of the net, and maybe you have outperformed, you know, kind of the results so far. So you just kind of keep doing what you've been doing. But from a team standpoint, are there goals out there that you guys want to accomplish? Do you talk openly about, you know, things like wanting to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think we all do. But at the same time, like, I don't think you go into any game, especially the team we have, every game you go into, you know you can win it. You just got to play your game and play your best game. That's it. And I think just the confidence we have that when we do that, we're going to more often than not win. And like you said, it's been up and down. I think the results haven't been what we wanted. There's things we want to fix, and definitely like these 4 days, like we talked about, is a really big thing to like kind of reset and look at your game and go back to the details and what you had. And then, but at the same time, like I just looking behind the results, and we're playing some good hockey. We're beating some good teams. We're close to beating other good teams like Dallas game, and I think just trusting that and the process that we keep doing that, we're gonna be a tough team to play against.
Okay, Ollie, thanks so much for the time. Once again, a big congratulations representing your country coming up in the nation's face-off. Best of luck the rest of the season. We'd love to have you on again soon, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me. Have a good one, guys.
All right. Bye. Ollie Mata, he has been around the NHL for quite some time and won a Stanley Cup. He's 30 years old. He was traded for a third-round pick in October when it became pretty clear, and certainly some injuries came into play for the hockey club, but they definitely needed help on the back line. So he was with the Red Wings, and then they traded him to the hockey club for a third-round pick. That was on October the 29th. Has been called up to represent. I did not know this was a new tournament. Silly me for asking him if it's the first time he's played in it, when it's actually the first time the tournament has taken place. So good stuff. Seems like a nice guy, really good player. Couple of assists on the season so far. He is used in some of the power play situations. Hockey club had a game on Monday, a loss against Dallas, no games all week, and then a back-to-back situation on the road at Buffalo, then at Philadelphia. All right, we'll get back to some college football coming up on the other side, but affordable options at your disposal for your wireless situation, internet options, cable television as well. All you have to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
And thanks so much. This is a great opportunity. The promotion is set up so it just puts money in your pocket. Stop overpaying. Your bill has increased. You got a big overpriced bill with the cable company or DirecTV. And they make you feel like they've got you hostage, right? You're like, I don't want to change. Listen, this offer, you get a massive amount of credits the next 2 years. You're going to get the best DVR on the planet. Auto records, auto hops. Plus, we'll throw in Netflix free for the next 2 years. And, guys, I'll tell you, this is a lot of money. It's not just a little bit of money. Call us up. Take the upgrade. Dish's system is set up so you can have streaming apps built into it. It'll work on every single TV. You don't have to put in passcodes or anything. It just works. And you get Netflix free. There you go. You probably already have Amazon like most people. That's a channel. So it's simple and easy. Call us up. Take the upgrade. Let us get you set up with that. Remember, too, Dish does send out flyers directly to people with special individual offers. If you get a white envelope that says Dish on it, open it up. Check out the offer. Call us up with that offer. We'll get you that plus the Netflix offer plus the dinner at JCW's, have you installed for free as early as next day. Remember, our prices cannot be beat. We're the only premier elite retailer in Northern Utah. Call us now, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Bros. Give you a quick update on early signing day for the University of Utah. And is the offensive coordinator hire close? We'll talk about that coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Stay tuned to hear from the voice himself, Bill Riley. It is early signing day. The voice of the Utes Riles in the 5 o'clock hour. It is early signing day for college football. According to the ESPN rankings I have in front of me, Utah is the 40th ranked class in the country. Now, as we've talked about all day, this day hit a little different back in the day when really it was the only way to add talent and such. But now with the transfer portal, a lot of these things have changed. You know, there's no guarantee that these young men are even going to play for the colleges they signed with, because NIL and the transfer portal have changed it. They could get offers, they could get more money elsewhere, and ultimately they could never even set foot on campus. But when you look at what the University of Utah has been able to accomplish today, yeah, most of the recruiting rankings think very highly of the class, and only time will tell as far as how this is going to go down. Now, we're waiting for official news on the offensive coordinator. And Porter, there are reports, and you tell me if you know much about this young man. We'll talk about it with Bill coming up. Mac Leftwich, Texas State offensive coordinator, is 29 years old. And according to multiple people, I don't do the whole track the planes thing because I like to go live my life when I'm not on air, just do other things.
Fair.
But apparently he's in Salt Lake. Any insight as to whether or not this should be the guy we're focusing on now?
Yeah, well, I'll just give you my insight on kind of this whole story and how it's played out, and go back to last Thursday, maybe. And Utah, of course, was preparing for their game, but they were also in the throes of an OC search. Ben Arbuckle is a name that, of course, we know now is with Oklahoma. And Utah was essentially zeroed in on Ben Arbuckle, Spence, to the point where there were people in that department that thought it was done, right? That it was that close with some of the stuff with Arbuckle. Of course, Oklahoma comes in, he heads there, and at that point, from what I understand, attention was shifted not to resuming the search, but directly to Mac Leftwich, right? And from what I understand, yeah, that's something that they're trying to get along across the finish line in the probably next 24, 48 hours. As we know, timing is crucial in all of these regards. But they've been operating, Spence, under the assumption that they've got a guy in place in the next several days, and that's what a lot of the recruits are operating under the assumption of, and it appears based on maybe some of the recruits that are coming in, including a Texas State transfer quarterback that announced his intention today. It appears that's the direction we are moving in, but I will also say that much like Oklahoma did with Arbuckle, Texas Tech is hot on the heels of one Mac Leftwich, and something we have to keep an eye on.
So we've heard a lot about, and Coach Witt has kind of alluded to certain things as far as the type of offensive coordinator he's looking for to call plays for the squad coming up next year. What sort of boxes do you think he wants checked? Because I wondered if there would be more of an out-of-the-box hire, not the typical hire that we've become accustomed to. And I do think history will smile on Andy Ludwig for the success he had when he had a good quarterback, and it wasn't typical Utah, just simply 3-yard and a cloud of dust football. I mean, Andy was a creative guy, and when he had talent and a good quarterback, they had some of the best offenses in the history of the school. Does Leftwich fit what you feel like Kyle's looking for? Are those the boxes that he wants checked, or do you think it's going to be more of an offensive coordinator hire that's in line with what we're used to?
Yeah, no, I mean, the offense that the Mac Leftwich runs is one that it's balanced, right? So that is one that Kyle Whittingham and Utah, from their ethos, they're going to look at that as at least a good candidate, right? A guy that can win in multiple ways, whether it's on the ground, whether it's through the air. But he also runs a little bit of a pro style spread offense when it is a passing down, say, that I think through the years of the Pac-12, through the years of the Big 12, the 1 year of the Big 12, even in days in the Mountain West, it was a type of offense that it seemed was a real challenge for Morgan Scalley, a guy that is maybe going after an offensive coordinator that challenges him on the other side of the ball each day, going forward. It seems like if you do want to zero in on Mac Leftwich in Texas State, it's a guy that's going to grow alongside a new head coach, a guy that's going to grow with the new head coach and does some things that I think can help both of them along. And I think that can be true whether Kyle's here this next year or not. And that kind of seems like the way they're approaching this hire.
247 Sports overall team rankings. Utah ranks 46th in the nation, which is 7th in the Big 12. Last year, Utah, according to 247, had the 40th ranked class in the country. BYU finds itself 55th in the country, 12th in the Big 12, 5 spots below Utah with their 2025 recruiting class. But this could change. I mean, it changed last year. I think BYU jumped into the top 40 last year with some late signees. According to the ESPN rankings, the top offensive prospect for the Utes is Wyatt Becker, the quarterback out of California. And then Christian Thatcher is their top defensive prospect, a linebacker as well. So, look, transfer portal right around the corner. Again, early signing day. It's kind of fun content and fun fodder, but only time will tell how this stuff plays out. All right, we'll do more on this coming up on the other side. About an hour of college football to take you home on a Wednesday. 5 o'clock hour of the drive comes your way next right here on ESPN 700. All right, what's going on? Drive at 5 time. Your commute home on a Wednesday afternoon gets rolling right now. It's been a nice day today, about 45 degrees, sunny and clear, although we do have a little inversion situation settling in, which, is the deal. Happy Wednesday to you. Halfway through your work week, and then one day closer to the weekend, one day closer to pro football. 2 days away from championship weekend in college football. Don't forget, we are your home of the NFL in this market. Should be a good Thursday night game. Hard to believe that it is week 14, but that indeed it is. Potentially fantasy football playoff time, maybe for some of you. The Packers and the Lions coming up tomorrow night. Prime video. Right now, Detroit's a 3-point favorite for a little Thursday night action to get week 14 rolling. Then a bevy of really, really good college football games throughout the weekend, starting on Friday with the Mountain West Championship, UNLV in Boise, and then all day Saturday. Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, is politicking for his conference, as most people are wont to do this time of year. And obviously college football with early signing day today and championship weekend coming up, combined with the CFP rankings released last night. Very topical today. The voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, coming up in about 22 minutes from right now. 5 o'clock hour of the drive tonight is brought to you by my friends at Prize Picks. It is the easiest way to play daily fantasy. Best way to get real money sports action. 10 million members, billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. You can run your game on Prize Picks all season long. They're giving away free money right now. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Run your game on Prize Picks. So early signing day today. Again, does not hit the way that it used to. And Utah, according to 247 Sports, has the number 46 class in the country. That's good for 7th in the Big 12. On the other hand, BYU, as of right now, number 55 in the country, and that is 12th in the Big 12. As we've talked about all day, there simply is no guarantee that any of these young men will ever end up on campus because of the new reality of college football, the potential to sign NIL deals. There are no rules. The NCAA can't enforce anything. So ultimately, we'll see who's here come spring. We'll see who enrolls early, and then we'll see who's actually on the roster when it comes to this signing day situation. We are awaiting word on potentially news about the offensive coordinator slot that is vacant right now at the University of Utah. Ben Arbuckle, who most people believe was the top candidate on Utah's list, agreed to become Oklahoma's new offensive coordinator this week. There are people who actually track private planes and track which coaching candidates are left on the list and where they're at. And according to multiple reports, Mac Leftwich, Texas State offensive coordinator and their quarterbacks coach, is currently in Salt Lake City interviewing for the offensive coordinator job. Obviously, if any of the news comes down and breaks while we're on air, we will bring it to you. As we discussed throughout the course of the show today, it just simply feels like, as a result of no official announcement of the status of Coach Witt for the upcoming season, to me, it means that he's coming back. That's ultimately what I've landed on here. The other scenarios just don't seem to be very realistic when it comes to who Kyle appears to be. I just don't think he's a wishy-washy guy. He feels like the type of pragmatic thinker that when he makes his mind up, he simply would just make his mind up and then move on to the next thing. And you don't really need an announcement when a coach is under contract. So that's just kind of my gut feel, as Coach Witt has talked about during his media availability. He and Morgan are in lockstep with this hire. When it comes to the offensive coordinator, somebody taking over for Andy Ludwig, who stepped down after some struggles when it came to the offense on the side of things for the University of Utah. And look, the cruel reality for Utah football this year, because of the dominant performance of the defense more or less all year long. Early on, the defense was dominating outside of creating turnovers, but they turned that around down the stretch when they started, pick sixes, scooping scores, creating havoc plays. An average offense leads the Big 12, it leads Utah to essentially at least competing for the Big 12 championship. But the offense was less than average. Most measurable metrics put it near the bottom of the Big 12. So we'll see what they're able to do via transfer portal addition. According to the ESPN rank I have in front of me, they rank Wyatt Becker as the top offensive prospect signed by the Utes this class. He's a 4-star quarterback out of California. And Christian Thatcher, who's a linebacker out of Vegas, is, according to ESPN's ranking, the highest-ranked defensive prospect signed by the University of Utah. So, started the show off today with some conversation about the CFP rankings that were released last night and talking about it in real time when you're on air live in the 5 o'clock hour and ESPN's doing their reveal. You just try to get as much information out there on the airwaves as you possibly can. You're not really digesting it in real time. Top 4 seeds, no surprise, it was Oregon as well as Texas. SMU comes in at 3. Boise State comes in at number 4. And Brett Yormark, with his comments today, is not very happy about a P5 potential situation to get that number 1 seed as opposed to the winner of Arizona State and Iowa State. It does appear that the bubble teams right now are the bubble teams that are going to be in. You know, teams like Tennessee, teams like Ohio State, Alabama, Indiana. You know, in the event that Clemson beats SMU, there will be a real debate about who gets in, either SMU or Alabama. But if SMU loses to Clemson, it means they lost the 2 hardest games they had on their schedule to BYU and to Clemson. And then a lot of upset Ole Miss fans, which I get. I don't really buy the South Carolina stuff. And then Miami, to me, biggest paper tiger and has been all year long. It just appears that who's in right now is probably going to be in. Conference championship Friday and Saturday will kind of give us more of a clarity when it comes to the seeds and what the matchups are going to be. The matchups as of right now, it would be Arizona State and Penn State. These are projections. Obviously, Iowa State will have something to say about this. But the Big 12 champ slated to play potentially Penn State. Obviously, Penn State has a game against Oregon. Oregon's the favorite out of the Big 10. Penn State pulls an upset. That would kind of throw a monkey wrench in everything. Tennessee would be at the shoe to take on Ohio State, which would be a lot of fun. A first-round matchup between Alabama and Notre Dame. And then Indiana and Georgia. The winner of Indiana-Georgia would advance to play Texas. The winner of Bama-Notre Dame would advance to play SMU. I mean, Alabama has a pretty clear path all the way to the semifinals where they would most likely play either Texas or Georgia, which would be great television, you know, and there is brand bias. I'm sorry. We can complain about it. We can yell about it. There's brand bias. There always has been. And that's the way this thing is designed for powerful television executives to get the most incendiary TV show on their network. That's what they want. The winner of Tennessee-Ohio State would advance to play Oregon. The winner of Arizona State, Penn State would advance to play Boise State, and that's kind of the scenario as of right now out of the world of college football. So it is a busy, busy news cycle. Even though the season is over for the University of Utah, the offseason, one of the most important offseasons in Utah football history, is going on right now. A bunch of news about targets being flipped here or there. The up-to-date, and this is ESPN, 247 does a really good job as well. Up-to-date recruiting rankings at the top. It is the usual suspects. Georgia at number 1. Dan Lanning in Oregon at number 2. Texas comes in at number 3. It's Ohio State at 4. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer at 5. Michigan comes in at 6. Auburn jumps up to number 7. LSU at 8. Texas A&M at 9. Florida at 10. You have to scroll all the way down to, I haven't even seen it yet, the number 1 Big 12 recruiting class. As of right now is TCU. They come in at number 20. So they're number 20 and the number 1 ranked Big 12 recruiting class. You got some breaking news for us on early signing day? What do you got for us?
Signing day.
What do you got?
As you mentioned, Utah, their top offensive prospect that they had landed over the course of the day was Wyatt Becker, the quarterback. Well, they just landed another 4-star on the offensive side. Racine Guillory is a running back who he had offers from Ole Miss. He had some other SEC offers, and they went and nabbed him out of Texas. It's actually a big get for Utah on Racine Guillory.
He can really run.
You watch his tape.
He's fast.
He is quick.
No, I just get a kick out of days like today where you hear from people. And, you know, my favorite thing is listening to the coaches being interviewed after signing day is done. Like,
right.
Yeah, we got everyone we wanted. Well,
everyone.
You're the 70th ranked recruiting class. You didn't get everybody you wanted.
Maybe some of them, though.
But everybody kind of gives you the same walking line. So, yeah, Racing, is it Guillory? Is that
Guillory,
Guillory,
yep.
okay. Out of Texas. His final two, Utah and Ole Miss. So I don't know if that's a flip, but that obviously is a good sign. BYU at this point, no 4-star recruits. According to the rankings I have in front of me, BYU, their recruiting class as of now is number 12 in the Big 12 and number 55 in the country. Now, last year, BYU was also ranked in the mid-50s, and they made a massive jump, adding some late ads. They jumped up into the 40s. So, look, today is just kind of a day that's fun to talk about possibilities, but nowhere near a finished product. And certainly, as we've talked about, BYU with 18 players signed from high school, but as of right now, no 4- or 5-star players. And the names keep spilling in. Utah right now, a 4-star player, J.J. Buchanan out of Henderson. I believe he's a Bishop Gorman kid. Cyrus Palu, linebacker from St. George, 4-star. And then the new running back, the Porter just referenced, also a 4-star player. So according to the numbers I have in front of me, Utah has 4 stars as of now. And maybe as a result of this, I don't know if it's a flip at running back, but maybe that will improve the rankings for the University of Utah. Transfer portal right around the corner, which the cruel reality is a lot of these players are probably going to get gone before they ever end up on campus. Just continuing to really, in my opinion, mandate the expedited process to try to get this thing a little bit settled in so schools and member institutions aren't necessarily out there on their own. But early returns right now, I guess you have to surmise that the NIL stuff, pretty good situation for the Utes because as of now, really only Jalen Glover. Is that your understanding, Porter? I just have not seen any announcement of any player as of note. And look, Jalen Glover this year was like the 3rd or the 4th string running back, but BYU as of now has lost 4 players to the transfer portal, some good ones as well. And I think Utah has only got with 1. And it's not like Jalen Glover is going to sting that much. Any other Utes that you're hearing potentially entering the transfer portal?
Yeah, as of now, Jalen Glover's the only contributor that has entered the transfer portal. You got to go back to deep in the depth chart. Vili Tua Fato Fua.
Nice job.
Is your other one that has entered the transfer portal. That's the 2 for the Utes so far.
Okay, so no harm, no foul there. Cody Epps has entered the transfer portal for Brigham Young, as has Jackson Bowers. Micah Harper, who at one point was one of their better defensive players, but he had a knee injury that kind of knocked him out. And then Miles Davis, the best name for a running back really in all of college football. Maybe it's just how I think. If my running back was Miles Davis, he'd get all the carries.
No, I mean, it is the best name there. If you're in football, we can go back to the Friday Night Lights. The Booby Miles guy. Mm-hmm. It's just a good name. It's just a good name.
It's an excellent name. So obviously, if any of the breaking news comes our way before we sign off at 6 o'clock, we'll bring it to you. But we're tracking the new offensive coordinator and all of these young men who are signing on the dotted line to play for Utah and BYU and other schools. and a brown bear, a very large brown bear, started running up river. And it was an impressive specimen. And attached to the video was like, I guess black bears aren't as dangerous, so you can engage with them. The saying was like, brown bear lay down, black bear fight, and white bear you're going.
Yeah,
you're
dead.
fine.
You're
so,
done.
So it is because you're a gentleman that spends a lot of time in the wild. You enjoy hiking. You enjoy the outdoors. You were raised in God's country up in Summit County. Let's say you're on a solo mission. I'm talking cutoff T-shirt, bandana, camel pack, just you out there.
Real Christopher McCandless stuff.
Yes, you are into the wild. Which one animal would you most not want to see as you turned around and realized the animal was like 15 yards away from you?
Yeah, it's a tough one because this is a one that's been posed to me many a times, and you mentioned the polar bear, right? That's one that is you're done. It's 2,000 pounds. It's the size of a bull, but it has teeth that are longer than your fingers, right? Like there's just no way around it. But for me, it always comes down to like things I could actually experience. I'm not trudging around the Arctic, right? I'm not trudging
yet.
around the North Pole
Not
yet.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always been mountain lions.
Oh, really?
Cats are killing machines. They are genetically engineered killing machines. And when you see what your house cat can do to, whatever birds or rats or even you, if it gets pissed off, just imagine what a 300-pound cat can do that can run 45 miles an hour. And the thing with the mountain lions is that they're not going to really attack you. But if they do, you're not going to know it until after it's happened or as it's happening. Whereas a bear, usually you see it, right? There's a warning there. It's hard though because if you're up there alone and maybe unarmed, that's the big equalizer. Humans are always big tough guys walking around with their weapons. But if you're up there, in the bush and you come across a bear, a cougar, a wolf, a moose, something that doesn't even want to eat you, you're outmatched, and it's not a great situation.
The video of the brown bear was like...
I saw that, actually.
Overwhelmingly impressive. It was like a specimen running up the river.
That's kind of what I was getting at with the mountain lions. I don't think a lot of people who haven't seen them up close and personal don't realize that they're not little kitties. Those are monsters. Like, I've seen one in the Camas area that... Spence, I thought it had escaped from the zoo. It was like a Serengeti type, like 500. It was massive. Jeez. It looked like one that you would see in Africa, and it's probably the animal that strikes the most fear into me. Even though they will leave you alone no matter what, unless kind of cornered.
Utah women take on Utah State tonight. Utah women's basketball coming off a big upset of Notre Dame. The Utah women are 6-2. They're 5-0 at home. This game is at the Delta Center. Utah State 1-7, 0-3, so not a very good team. So you're going to hear that coming up in just a little bit here on the radio station as your home of the Utes. But Porter, before we get out of here, what comes our way on a Thursday show?
On a Thursday edition of the program, as you just mentioned, Utah women's basketball in action tonight. Well, tomorrow we'll hear from Gavin Peterson, the head ball coach for Utah women's basketball, of course, taking over for Lynn Roberts in the last couple of weeks. Craig Bolerjack, Gordon Monson for our big hour on a Thursday. And then switching up a little bit since he's out of pocket on a Friday, Chris Comrani is going to stop by the program. So a bunch of fun in-studio stuff. And then, of course, catching up with the Utah women's basketball coaches, or Utah women's basketball's newest head coach.
All right, there you go. That'll be a fun Thursday show. Join us for that. With that, we'll say goodnight for a Wednesday, and a very special thank you to Bill Riley, Richard Smith, Howard Beck, and Ali Mata for any of the sound you may have missed from the program today. Go to the website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app. You can take us on the go wherever you go. It's the way I listen to our radio station. That's the ESPN 700 app. That's available in the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. And then finally, for what we do, support our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and all the content is up there for your consumption, whichever part you want to listen to.